Alrighty, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's having a good night. I know I'm doing pretty good today. So, thank you all for joining me again. Tonight is gonna be a fun night. We're diving deep. We're taking a deep dive tonight into Rstp and Ethernet channel configurations. So, you guys caught yesterday's stream. Oh, let me turn on my light. I'm so dark right now. Oh boy. Woo! Let there be light, they say. Let there be light. That's good. Maybe let me turn on one of these lights. A wee bit brighter for everybody. You guys can see my pretty face. I know you guys just come here to see my pretty face anyways. Let's try this color. So pretty. A little blue. Everybody likes a little blue. That nice cooling look. Makes my beard shine. Yeah, guys. Welcome to another day. So, it's coffee time, actually. Let's get some coffee first. Everybody, we got our learning caps. Doink, doink, doink. We got our coffee, right? Let's make sure we start this. Let's make sure we... Whoa! That would really stink if I poured it in my lap, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Yes, it would. So, yeah. What was I going to say? So yesterday, like I said, we took the first steps into STP, and we talked a little bit about Rstp. We did a nice little lab in Cisco Packet Tracer last night before we ended the stream. Today we got Cisco Model and Lab up. I played around today in there. I made it actually a pretty decent lab just to go over STP, Rstp, Rstp plus, and then because what we're going to be diving into tonight and what we're going to be learning about is how Rstp plus works with multiple VLANs, because there's a difference and we're going to get into a little bit of the history, but just to give you kind of a little bit of what I was reading on is in the beginning, STP and Rstp, they were only made to work with actually one VLAN, with only existing on a switch's one VLAN. So what Cisco did though is they made Rstp plus. That had the ability then to make multiple trees inside of multiple VLANs. All right, that needed to occur so Rstp and STP would be able to be functionable inside of a switch that had multiple VLANs. Okay, we're still on the layer 2 level. Okay, and this is these topics that we're going to be getting into tonight are still covering layer 2 Rstp logic and stuff like that. Even though this logic works over layer 3 switches, because we're going to be covering Ethernet channels at the end of this, it's only going to be covering and talking about layer 2 Ethernet channels. And as if you guys join, hold on, I need some coffee. Nice and hot. Hope you guys like the background. I just made that right before the stream started. Getting better at Photoshop. That's one thing I actually might start doing too. Is starting to do maybe, I don't know, maybe some artsy type streams. You know, because I've been doing a lot of stuff in Blender, and I've been doing a lot of stuff in Blender and in Photoshop, and working between the two. Like I'll create some stuff in my thumbnails in Blender, and then I'll shoot it over to Photoshop, and then I'll do some stuff over in Photoshop with it, you know, to finish up how I want it to look for the thumbnails. I've been getting real goofy with my thumbnails lately. If you catch any of my, if you go over to my YouTube page, you'll see what I'm talking about with, you'll see what I'm talking about with my thumbnails. I've been, I've been getting goofy with them. But that's neither here nor there. All right, let me grab my book, and then we'll do a quick overview. Yeah, I kind of summed it up, but we'll give a quick overview of what we're talking about, what we're going to be talking about tonight. Okay. All right. So, go. All right. So, Chapter 10, Rstp and Ethernet channel configurations. All right. It's going to be, again, configure and verify, configure and verify layer 2 Ethernet channels. We're going to be describing some basic operations of rapid PBST, all right, plus spanning rapid PBST plus spanning tree protocols and identifying basic operations, root port, root bridge, primary and secondary. So tonight, you really need to have some serious amounts of coffee in there and your learning cap on, because this is going to get into, we're getting into thicker and thicker subjects now as we're going along. All right, this was you guys are right up to where I was with my studies by now. So I was right up to Chapter 10 with my personal study. So from now on, guys, I am inside of you guys' shoes. All right, here we're going forward. So I'm gonna, you guys have caught up to my knowledge. So yeah, so as we continue, we're gonna be taking on this challenge of learning everything at the same exact time, which is exciting for me, guys. So but I mean, this has been awesome. I have been loving this stuff, guys. I've been learning so much more than I ever have. What up, Paul? Woo, 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 woo. Thank you for joining the stream again. Woo, 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 woo. Hope you got your coffee. What you got? Some honeydew again tonight? Gotta love that honeydew. So yeah, not today. So yeah, so like I said, we're gonna be diving into these more technical subjects tonight. We got to cover some binary, just very slightly on binary, but so we can understand how we're going to be coming up with the root cost and the priority cost and stuff like that. It uses binary to figure all that out. And now I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure you guys understand what it's talking about, how it comes up with that number. All right. It shouldn't be too difficult for us to get through this, but it's just something that we have to Oh, you got to work tonight. All right, my brother. Oh, you got to work. You got to work at 11 to 7. Woo! I'm going to be starting a schedule like that too, my friend. I'm going to be on the overnights here very shortly. Not looking forward to it. Because my whole thing is I'm home with the kiddos during the day, homeschooling them while my wife works all day. And she ended up getting a job during the day. So my two cookers is your second week. Yeah, it's tough, man. I feel you. It ain't easy. The last time I did overnights was back in my military days, and I hated it. I ain't looking forward to it again. And I can probably tell you ain't looking forward to it either. Hopefully it's nothing too physical, though. You know what I'm saying? All right. So, let's start off like we start off every every stream. Let's get over to the Pearson test practice. Let's do a test practice of what we learned last night. Remember, last night was the beginnings of STP and introducing us to Rstp. Let's take a dive into a test practice of that, and then from there we'll dive into the actual chapter. All right, we'll review the entire chapter, and then from there we're gonna dive into Cisco Modeling Lab tonight. We won't have Cisco Packet Tracer up. I'll primarily be using Cisco Modeling Lab tonight. So again, any questions on Cisco Modeling Lab, Cisco Packet Tracer? You guys are always more than welcome to ask me what is going on it, so you guys can have an understanding of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and stuff like that. So without that being said, let me swing over here. I'm using a new controller tonight, testing it out to see how it works, and boom, baby, I like how it works. All right, that is neato. I like my new controller. Monitor chat with it too. I'm liking this. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It's like a McDonald's burger. I'm loving it. All right. Move my monitor around so I can see. All right. It'd help if I turn this on. There we go. All right. So let's dive into practice exam. Let's start practicing. Let me grab my markers real quick. All right. So we're going to do a full exam. We're going to do it on chapter 9 as we reviewed last night. Let's get over to chapter 9. Here we go. Spanning tree protocol concepts. And let's get this party started. All right. All right. An SDP topology with 3 switches has one link between each pair of switches. Which answer best describes the primary decision point as to which a non-root switch has a designated port on the link between the switches and which doesn't? Okay, so the device with the highest BDU would become designated, and the other switches would be blocked. Nope. The switch with the highest root cost would become the designated. Would become designated, and the other switches would be blocked. The device with the lowest beaded bridge ID would also become designated, and the other switches would be blocked. The switch with the lowest root cost would become designated, and the other switches would block. The switch with the lowest priority setting would become designated, and the other switches would block. So let's read this question one more time. An STP topology with 3 switches has one link between each pair of switches, which best describes the primary decision point as to which non-root switches has a designated port on the link between switches and which doesn't. So the switch with the lowest priority setting would become designated, and the other switch would block. Let's go with this one. I'm just having a hard time because it's saying switches instead of interfaces or ports. So, all right, so I got it wrong. So the switch with the lowest root cost would become designated. So we were close. The other ones would block. So I was going with the lowest bridge ID. So in fact, it's the lowest root cost ID. Let me crack my window real quick, guys. All right. So let's kind of build that into our memory banks. The switch with the lowest root cost would become the designated, and the other switch would block. So that kind of stumbled me a little bit. So assuming that all defaults STP settings, which of SW3's ports, which switch 3's ports would become its root ports, and which one would become its roots. All right, let me break up my markers here. So switch 3. So switch 3, and which one will become its root, and which ports will become its root ports, and which one, and what will be the cost. So what is root? So root is switch 4. So that'd be 502. So it'd be 502 because switch 4 would become root at this point. But let's go look at the gigabit interface. So it'd be gigabit to gigabit, that'd be 8. Go with 2. You tricked me again. Yeah, see what I'm telling you? I'm right at where we're at. All right. So using the default port cost, a gigabit port has a cost of 4, and the fast Ethernet will have a cost of 19. Oof. Switch 3 will have 2 interfaces that will be caused to forward traffic. The root switch through its gigabit interface. So what it states is, since this is a gigabit interface, so even though it would have to forward traffic to switch 1, and then traffic would then go to gigabit 03 to 03, this is how the traffic would flow. So it would be this port right here that it would actually be blocking. All right. In the figure, in VLAN 1, all switches have the default STP, and all trunks are up and running at 100 megabytes per second. Which statements are true regarding the behavior of STP in the network? For VLAN 1, after STP topology has stabilized. So in the figure of VLAN 1, all switches have default STP settings, and all trunks are up and running at 100 megabytes per second. Which is true regarding the behavior of STP in this network? For VLAN 1 after STP has stabilized. All right. What is true about VLAN 1? Which statements are true about STP of VLAN 1 after? So switch 3's 501 interface will be forwarding. S2's, we got to choose 2 answers. S2 would be creating hello messages regarding based on the hello timer. I don't know. Hold on. All right, so it's giving us these MAC addresses. So switch 1 would be root, right? Yeah. So switch 1 would be root. So this one's root. Whoa, that's a too big, huh? We got root right here. Switch 1 is root. So switch 3's 501 interface would be in the forwarding state. Let me see. Yeah, it would be. Yeah, that's true. All right. Switch 2 would be creating hello messages. Nope. Switch 4's 501 would be designated port. So where's 501? No, that would be its actual root. This would be its root port. Okay. S1 would be creating hello messages. Yes. So let's choose this one and this one. All right, got that one right. All right. What is the name of the RSTP port state that replaces STP disabled and blocking? So that is disregarding. Remember that one? We've kind of nailed that one in the head pretty hard. All right. Which of the following are functions provided by spanning tree protocols? We got to choose. It prevents broadcast storms, prevent multiple copies of a single frame to be forwarded. Places all layer 3. Nope. Prevents MAC address instability. Yes. Okay. All right. The exhibit shows a diagram of a small switch network. All switches use layer 2 switching, okay, and no layer 3. The diagram identifies the root switch as switch 1, okay, cool, and all switch ports, okay, as designated ports, DP ports, and Vlan 10. All switches have STP mode rapid PVST command configured. The answers list ports that are neither root or nor designated. Choose the answer that lists RSTP's port role that is meaningful for this port's topology. So you got to choose 3. So on switch 4, the 5.0, man, give me a better look at things. 5.0.2. Which one would be 5.0.2 though, my friend? You're not listing that. Where's switch 2? There's switch 2. No, switch 4. So the 5.0.2. So the 5.0.2 could be RST backup port. Backup, yes, because it's going, since 5.0.1 is designated port, and this is going to the hub, it could be backup. So remember, designated to backup. Access and backup, and then root and alternate. Alternate and root, designated and backup. Access and backup. All right. Switch S3 spot 01 could be, so where's S3? Is S3, and it's saying that the 5.0.4 could be alternate. Nope. Nope, that'd be backup. Switch 2's, switch 2 could be gigabit 0-2. Gigabit 0-2 could be, that might, no, that would be alternate. Switches for gigabit 0-1, this would be alternate, yep. Because if this were to go down, since this is going, again, to another switch, that could be alternate. S3's 5.0.4 could be backup. Yes, okay. There we go. Which one did I get wrong? Switches S3's 5.0.4 could be alternate port. Alternate port. But it's not going to the switch, it's going to the hub, which is an access port. Okay. It's crazy logic. All right. RSTP serves as an improved protocol in comparison to older STP. Which of the following answers list the features of RSTP that does not exist in STP? RSTP serves as an improved protocol in comparison to older STP. Which of the following answers list a feature of RSTP that does not exist in STP? The criteria used by switches to determine designated ports on a segment. The criteria uses by switch to determine ports act up a port as to act in a backup role. Criteria used by a non-root switch can be criteria. So these sort of be backup. Switches, the criteria used by switches to determine the designated ports on a segment. I'm stuck between these two. I'm going to go with my first guess. I was right. All right. Oof. Oof. Let's do that again, just so we can nail all those answers into our memory bank. Span a tree. Yep. Let's do Ethernet LANs too, just to give ourselves a little bit of a harder time. Give ourselves a bigger test too. All right. Refer to the exhibit in the diagram to make it possible for traffic to pass between PC1's LAN and PC2's LAN. The link between S1 and switch 2 would be configured as a trunk. Which Cisco command could be used on on switches 1 gigabit 0-1's interface to force actively a trunk to? So we want to be the dynamic desirable, okay? All right. Which iOS command could be used to display which VLANs are supported over a specific configured switch trunk? So that would be show interface trunk. Based on the figure, what Cisco iOS command would be used on a switch switches forced to correctly configure switch port 501 to be an access port in VLAN 30? So that would be switch port access VLAN 30. What is true about the command switch port non-negotiate? Use this command to prevent switches becoming trunks. This is on nope. If it's connected to a switch that uses the dynamic desirable, the name of the switch will not trunk. It is used nope. All right. In this network, all switches are powered on and all relevant VLANs have been configured correctly and working based on the output in the exhibit. Which of the following statements is true about switch 2? So switch 2. So this is the one that it was tricking us, that it states right here how it has 24 fast Ethernet interfaces, 2 gigabit Ethernet interfaces. So if we look down here at the actual defaults, remember trunks won't show up on the show VLAN brief. So as you can see right here on the it ends at 5021. So 5022, 5023, and 5024 are trunks. So 3 interfaces are trunks. All right. Remember, on the show VLAN, on that show VLAN brief command, all your trunk ports will not show. That was something I had to learn yesterday. So your trunk ports will not show when you run that command. All right. All right. I'm still connected to my scissor. All right. Assuming all default STP settings, assuming all default STP settings, which of S3's ports will become its root port? And what will be its root cost? So this is what we just learned. So fast Ethernet. I get a different color. I'm gonna get my pink. I love the pink for some reason. I don't know why. I love pink. So fast Ethernet has a cost of 19. Okay. Gigabit Ethernet has a cost of 4. All right. So if we use this logic, gigabit Ethernet, all right, right here, all right, so gigabit Ethernet on switch 3, remember, we have to figure out which one would be the root. So 3, 4, 2, 1. So S4 will be root right now, all right? So even though the fast Ethernet is logically closer, it would have a cost of 19, all right? All right? But if we were to send our frames out to gigabit Ethernet 0-1 to switch 1's gigabit 0-2, out gigabit 0-3, all right, we would assume a cost of 4 right here, all right, and then another cost of 4 right here, all right, but this would cost us 19 right here, all right, so it would be out of the gigabit Ethernet 0-1 at a cost of 8, okay, because we would plus these two together, all right, to come up with a cost of 8, and then, but if we were to select 502, that would cost us 19. All right, that's how that logic works, and that's where I fumbled that ball, not remembering the cost of the actual ports. Okay, all right. What is the name of the new Rstp port state that replaces STP's disable and blocking state? So remember, that is discarding. Okay. All right. An STP topology with 3 switches has 1 link between each pair of switches. What answer best describes the primary decision point as to which the non-root switch has designated ports on the link between the switches? Okay. So it would choose the lowest root ID. All right. Not the lowest bridge ID. It would choose the lowest root ID. Okay. So it choose the switch with the lowest root cost. All right. All right. In the figure in VLAN 1, all switches have default STP settings, and all trunks are up and running at 100 megabytes per second. Which statement is true regarding the behavior STP in the network for VLAN 1 after STP has stabilized? So we look here and we see that switch 1 is root. So switch 1 is root. Okay. So switch 1 is now root. All right. So with that logic, all right, which statements is true about the behavior of STP over VLAN 1 after it's stabilized? Okay. We got to choose 2 answers. S2 will create, no, it won't create anything. Switch 1 will be creating the hello messages. All right. Switch 4's 501 become designated port. No, that would be root port. Switch 3's 501 interface would be in the forwarding state. Yes, it would. Nope, and yes. Okay, so we're going to choose those 2 right there. All right. The exhibit shows a diagram of a small switch network. All switches use layer 2 switching and no layers 3 switching. The diagram identifies the root switch as being S1, and all ports, root ports and designated ports are for VLAN 10. All switches have the spanning tree mode rapid Rstp command configured. The answers list ports that have been neither root port nor designated port. Choose the answer that lists an Rstp port role in this that is meaningful for this topology. All right. So switch 4's gigabit 0-1 could be an alternate port. Gigabit, yes, it can. Remember, alternate goes to another networking device. So root and alternate go together, and then backup goes to access. All right. So root, you can think alternate, access, you think backup. Okay. Switch 3's 504 could be backup. So this is where I got wrong. And I don't understand because this is not a root. This could not be root. It's an access. It's going to an end device. Even though I know this is wrong, even though I know by definition on how this test is, this is actually right. In my opinion, it's right. Okay? All right. On switches 2, could be gigabit 0-2 could be backup. No, because that's not an access. Switches 4, yes, because that's an access. Okay. And alternate. Again, I know this is wrong, but it wants to make me pick it as right. See? Rstp serves an important protocol in comparison to the older Stp. Which of the following answers list the functions of Rstp that does not exist? All right, in Stp. Nope, that's the same. Criteria uses by switch determined designated on the segments. No. Criteria is to switch non-root port. Own ports. No. Backup. So that's the difference between, since you see the terminology backup port roles, Stp does not use the terminology backup port roles, okay? All right. Which of the following are functions provided by spanning tree protocol? We've got to choose 3. It doesn't care about layer 3. MAC address instability prevents broadcast storm and prevents multiple copies of a single frame from being forwarded. All right. All right. I'm happy with that. We did a good review. All right. We even went back and reviewed chapter 8. We did a good review on chapter 8 actually. I'm pretty happy with that. All right. Can exit out of there. Come back over here. All right. Let me grab some more coffee real quick. Coffee. I gotta drink my coffee. That way I can talk 1,000,000 miles an hour so I can get through these lengthy chapters real fast. While I'm enjoying my coffee, let me clear my board. So, I know I'm out here on the East Coast, and we're supposed to be getting a pretty bad storm today. So, for all you folks that are out here on the East Coast with me, I hope you guys are safe tonight. And my boy Paul, since it does seem like you are working the overnight, my brother, please get home safely tonight. Please get home safely tonight, all right? Please, all right? If you got to tell your boss, eat, poop, and die hard because you are worried about your safety, tell your boss to eat, poop, and die hard because I'm worried about your safety, all right? Get home safe tonight, my brother. Remember, we're supposed to be getting a wicked storm tonight. A wicked. So. Hold on, let me finish this cup. I'm dribbling. My mustache if my mustache filters all the coffee for me, takes out all the grounds. It's the flavor saver. I remember I had a sergeant. His name was Sergeant Sanchez. We used to call him Old Dirty Sanchez. He had a big old mustache just like I have now. And he used to bend it down and he used to go, "It's the flavor saver, Caffarelli. The flavor saver." I never knew what he meant till later on. That sick old man. That sick old man he was. All right. Let's get to it. Let's stop messing around here. We're here for business, not for pleasure. All right. Chapter 10. Rstp and Ethernet channel configurations. Woo! All right. Configure and verify L2 and L3 Ethernet channels. LACP. Describe the need for the basic operations of Rapid PBST plus spanning tree protocol and identifying basic operations. Root port, root bridge, primary, secondary, and other port names. Port states, forwarding, blocking. Port fast benefits. Cool. All right. Let's dive into it, guys. This is going to be deep. This is going to be heavy, but we're going to get through it together. All right. This chapter shows how to configure Rapid Spanning Tree Protocol, Rstp, in Layer 2 Ethernet channels. The Ethernet channel content in the second major section of this chapter follows a typical flow for most configuration verification topics in the certification guide. It reviews concepts, shows configurations, and provides show commands that point out the configuration settings and operational state. That detail includes how to manually configure a channel, how to cause a switch to dynamically create a channel, and how Ethernet channels load distribution works. Pretty neat, load distribution. We're going to get into that too. That's going to be at the very end of the chapter, all right? All right. This first section of the chapter explores Rapid Spanning Tree Protocol and implementation, taking a different approach. Cisco mentions Rstp concepts, but not configuration verifications in the CCNA exam topics, all right? So it mentions Rstp concepts, but it doesn't get into the configurations and the verifications in the actual CCNA exam, okay? So for the exam purposes, we just need to know the concepts, all right? When I mean by concepts is we have to understand the primary principle of what Rstp does, the roles, the functions, and all that. What the exam is not going to have us do, it's not going to be having us configure and verifying Rstp settings on an actual switch, okay? But it is useful for us to know these things so we can have a better understanding of the actual concept. So even though we're not going to have the need to configure and verify these concepts, it is better for us to get the hands-on. I'm a hands-on learner, guys. All right. Just when I used to operate equipment, when I was in the Army, that's when I had first got my hands on heavy equipment. In the Army, they make you go through the whole boat of exams and everything else before they'll even let you touch equipment. You think you're in the Army and you just get to get on hands-on the equipment, and they'll throw you in a dozer and let you tear down a building. No, you got to go through step by step the exams, the principles, how these things work, the capacities of how this equipment works. So you don't kill yourself and you don't kill everybody else around you, okay? Heavy equipment is a very dangerous thing. Forklifts are the most dangerous things on the work site. More people die from forklifts than anything else on the work site alone. So, again, getting hands-on is how I've always been best at. But to understand the concepts, it is good for us to go to the textbooks. Let's understand the actual text knowledge that we need to know. That way, when we start touching this hands-on, we have a better idea of what we're actually doing. That way, we can actually absorb the textbooks a little bit better. That's why, at the end of all these things, that's why I feel as though it's very important for us to get onto the labs and do a lab, at least 1 or 2 labs before we end the night. That way, whatever we did, we can kind of imprint that on our brains physically by getting hands-on with it, okay? All right. However, to get a real sense of Rstp concepts, especially some concepts specific to Cisco Catalyst switches, you need to work with Rstp configurations and verifications. The first section of this chapter explores Rstp implementation, but at a means to the end or more fulfilling understanding of the concepts. So again, it's pretty much stating what I just said. To understand the concepts, it's better if we dive into the configurations and verifications. That way we can actually understand what Rstp is actually doing. Okay? All right. For those who like more, it has some practice exams. Yeah. So let's get right into the Do I Know This quiz right now. Let's see how much I know. All right. Let me just grab some more coffee. I'm not talking fast enough yet. I need more coffee. Woo! Coffee time. All right. Which type value, a spanning tree mode. All right. Which type value on the spanning tree mode type global command enables Rstp? All right. In Cisco's iOS, I want to say, by default, it is using the Rapid PBST. All right, so we're going to say number one. We're going to say A. All right. All right. Exam the following output of the showing spanning tree Vlan 5 command, which describes a root switch in a Vlan. Which answer accurately describes facts related to the root bridge ID? Let's take a look. So we're doing the show spanning tree Vlan 5. It's showing us that this is Vlan 5, spanning tree enabled. It's showing us the priority, all right? And what is the question? Which answer actually describes facts related to the root bridge ID, all right? So the priority, that's kind of default. Cost is 15. So what we have to do is this. It's going to be priority. Again, this is going to be a binary number. It's going to be priority though plus 15. That's how it's going to come up with that. So the system, how many do we got to choose? The system ID value, the system ID extension value is in decimal, is 5. No. Well, yes it is. Yes, it is. The root configuration priority, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. Because it's VLAN 5, it's 5 plus that, so it'd be 32778. That would be like the bridge ID. The root fit, nope. The system ID extension hexadecimal is no. So we're gonna go with A. We're gonna go with A on this one too. The system ID extension value is decimal 5. Yes. So let's go with A on this one too, guys. Hold on. Which answer actually describes the root bridge ID? The root bridge ID. Let's go with B. I'm second guessing myself, but I'm going to go with B. Let's go with B. All right. Which, with the Cisco RPV Rapid PBSD Plus, which of the following actions does a switch take to identify which VLAN is described by the PBDU? Choose 3 answers. Which of the Cisco Rapid PBSD with Cisco, which of the following actions does the switch take to identify which VLAN is described in the PBDSD? Okay. All right. A adds a VLAN tag when forwarding the BDU on a trunk, adds a VLAN ID in an extra list the VLAN ID in the middle as the middle of the 12-bit system ID. List the VLAN ID in the system ID extension. An extension in the BDU. Oof. Time to live. Extra on the list. I know it is in the 12th part. So it puts that VLAN ID. No. It doesn't put in the 12th part. The 12th part stays the same. The 12th part is what contains the MAC address still. It's a 4-bit. Doesn't tag it. Let's go, out of just process of elimination, let's go with 3. Let's go with B and D. And that's just out of process of elimination, guys, because I know it's not A. Doesn't add a tag to it. And the 12-bit contains the MAC address still. So out of process of elimination, we're going to go with B and D. So let's go 3, B, and D. And that's not how I like to answer questions, but I'm going to go with that for now. Okay? All right. An engineer configures a switch to put gigabit interface gigabit 0-1 and gigabit 0-2 into the same layer 2 Ethernet channel. Which of the following terms is used to configure? All right. So even though we're thinking Ethernet channels are weird because on the command line, to configure it, you're going to say channel group. When you run the report, it's going to come up as port channel. All right. But at the end of the day, they're Ethernet channels. So the name Ethernet, port, and channel are synonymous with each other. But on the actual command line, it's channel group. I know that because I labbed that last night. So that's 4, and we're going to say D. All right. Which combination of keywords on the channel group interface subcommand on 2 neighboring switches will cause the switch to use LACP in an attempt to add a link to the Ethernet channel? All right. LACP to attempt to make the link. LACP to make the link. So what do we want to do? What do we want to do? LACP, because there's 2 different kinds. It's the Cisco Proprietary, and then there's LACP. So I want to say we have to choose 2. Passive and active. Let's go with B and C on 5. Go with B and C. And again, I don't like guessing because guessing means I don't know. But we're gonna swinging for the fences. Shoot from the hip. All right. A Cisco catalyst switch needs to send a frame over a layer 2 Ethernet channel, which best describes how the switch balances the traffic over the 4 active links. Let's read that one more time. A Cisco catalyst switch needs to send a frame over a layer 2 Ethernet channel. Which answer best describes how the switch balances the traffic over the 4 Ethernet links channel? So, okay. Breaks each frame into a fragment of approximately 1/4. No, it doesn't break up the frame. Sends the entire frame over 1 link. Alternate links are in sequence of each other in successive frames. Nope. Sends the entire frame over 1 link, choosing the link, applying some math in each header field. I think it's C, but let me just read D. Sends the entire frame over 1 link, using that link with the lowest percentage usage. No, I believe it uses some kind of math in some kind of way to figure out how to use the load balancing. So this is a load balancing question. All right, let's see how we did. But 2 was a 2 answer question. Darn it. All right. So we got 1 right. We got 2 wrong. Definitely got 2 wrong. 3 was a 3 question one. Oh boy. I'm going to say I got partial credit for that one because I did get B and D. 4 is D. Oh, partial credit again is D on that one, and then C. All right, let's go look at what we did wrong here. All right, let me just mark down my wrong answer. So D, and then A, and then is this one, A and C. Let's go take a look now where we went wrong. Let's go look at 5 first. So 5 is B and D. So that's passive active and active active. Okay. So when we think LACP, we think in passive active and then active active. So active and passive. That's what we got to think. All right. All right. And then what's the next one we got wrong? Choose 3. Man, I got to start reading. So it adds a Vlan tag when forwarding the BDU. Adds a tag? I gotta read that then. Alright. And then 2. I got completely wrong. Oh, look at that. I felt as it was, right? So 5, yeah, because it's VLAN 5. Okay, I get you. And then the root configured priority value is, how would you come up with 32,768. Well, guess we got lots to learn in this chapter, everybody. We got a lot to learn. That just goes to show you how much how much I still need to learn about all these. Like I said, you guys have caught up to where I was at with my own personal study. So right now, this is as far as I've gone with my own study. So we're learning something totally new to Joe. All right. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Doesn't mean that I won't be able to figure it out, though. I should be able to figure it out pretty quick and be able to help you guys understand this, too, at the same time. So, all right. Cisco iOS switches today typically default to using Rstp rather than STP with the default settings so that Rstp works with no configurations. You can buy a new Cisco switch, yep, just like an STP. Connect it, connect to redundant links, and then, yes, it'll work. All right. Although Rstp works without configurations, most medium-sized campus LANs from some STP configurations. So it's pretty much just going over that inside of a campus type topology network. All right, which this is illustrating right here. All right, for its key topics. This is a typical campus LAN topology where you have your distributing switches. All right, and then you have your access switches. Remember, distributing would go to other switches or other network devices. Okay, when you think access, you think end device. Always, when you think access, you think end device. All right, that's servers, that's computers, that's phones. All right, hubs. All right, access, always think end device. Distributing, that you think that's going to another node. It's distributing frames to another point so that frame can be forwarded onto another device before it even gets to an access point. Okay, so that's what that's meaning. So in this topology here, what it's stating is you would want to have these distributing switches as the root. You would want these as root. Okay, that's what it's stating. Okay, so you want these as root. All right, and then those switches down there as all right, just distributing switches. All right, that is just these are just being used as just pretty much, they have root ports on them. All right, because they're going back to root switches, but these are the root switches. Okay, all right, and then these are all obviously the end devices right there. All right. All right. Let's just read the notes. Cisco uses the term access switches to refer to switches that connect to endpoints. Yep. The term distribution switches refer to switches that do not connect to endpoints, but rather connect to other access switches, provided a means to distribute frames throughout the local area network. If you want to read more, all right, so we have an appendix that it describes that a little bit deeper in discussion. As discussed in the early introduction of the chapter, the first section of this chapter explains a variety of STP, RSTP configuration topics, but with a goal of revealing a few more details about how STP and RSTP operate. Following the opening section of RSTP configurations, this next section examines how to configure layer 2 Ethernet channels and how they impact STP, RSTP. Okay. The need for multi-spanning trees. So let me say that again. The need for multi-spanning trees. Okay? All right. The IEEE first standardized STP, spanning tree protocol, as the IEEE, remember, the 802.1 Delta. All right? Rapid spanning trees, the 802.1 Whiskey. STP, 802.1 Delta. RSTP, 802.1 Whiskey. Okay? Standard first was publicized back in 1990. Woo! I was 5 years old back in 1990. All right. Yeah, I was 5. To put some perspective on that date, Cisco did not have a local area network switch product line at that time, and virtual LANs did not exist yet. So VLANs didn't exist. Switches, Cisco didn't have an actual switch on their production line just yet. There was bridges, I believe, and there was hubs too back then. But actual switches weren't, they were just coming to a thing, but they weren't an actual established thing yet. And then VLANs weren't even thought of yet. Okay, they didn't even exist yet. Instead of multiple VLANs in a physical Ethernet LAN, the physical Ethernet LAN existed in a single broadcast domain with one instance of STP. So what's that stating is, back then, when they had STP, what it was is one. Let me drink some coffee real quick. You had one physical switch. All right, you have one physical switch, and in that physical switch, that was that, all right, broadcast, okay? That was that entire broadcast domain, all right? Meaning there was only one, we'll say one, to keep this kind of in perspective, there was one subnet, all right? So this switch right here would be, you know, we'll say 192.168.0.1, all right? And what that did is this switch would connect to other switches, all right? There's other switches right here, all right? They had multiple ports off them. They had the same broadcast domain, all right? So we'll say 192.168.0.1, 192.168.0.1, all right? So they all resided on that same broadcast domain, all right? And STP obviously was invented to prevent that loop, that infinite loop from happening, but these bridges all resided on that same broadcast. Yeah, let me draw this. They all resided on that same broadcast domain, all right? So if you would have had to create a separate broadcast domain, you would have to have, you know, you would have other physical switches, you know what I'm saying? And you would have to build, you know, a different broadcast domain here now, okay? So this would be a separate broadcast domain, all right, back then. And this would be, you know, whatever, 10.0.0.1, you know, 10.0.0.1. You know what I'm saying? This would be a totally different broadcast domain, but the only way to do it back then was you had to break it off physically, all right? This was before the invention of VLANs, all right? But the invention of VLANs came, then STP had to change, all right? STP had to change because of that, because STP was built around the principle of only working within that one broadcast domain, okay? All right. All right. In the mid-90s, VLANs had appeared on the scene along with LAN switches. The emergence of VLANs posed a challenge for STP. The only type of STP available at the time, because STP defined a single common spanning tree, CTS, common spanning tree topology for an entire LAN. The IEEE needed an option to create multiple spanning trees so that traffic could be balanced across the available links, as shown in the figure, okay? With two different STP instances, S3 could block on different interfaces on each VLAN. Now, this might be hard for us to kind of visualize now. You'll see this is best described once we get over to our lab and we lab this, and you'll see we'll create the similar topology with 3 switches. We'll create multiple VLANs, okay? And then you'll see how through those different VLANs, the convergence, all right? Remember that word convergence, the listening and learning, you'll see how it takes place with inside of actual different VLANs. Okay, all right. So here's a quick little breakdown. Inside of VLAN 1, switch 1 would be root. Now this is just giving you an example. Switch 1 could be root on VLAN 2 again. It doesn't just mean that it has to change. It's just showing that it could change. Okay? That's all this is creating, okay? But this gets into load balancing, and maybe you want on VLAN 2 switch, you want a different root bridge for VLAN 2. So you would have to, go in and statically do this. But if you would allow Stp or Rstp to do this manually, it might even choose the same switch over and over again as being that root bridge for multiple VLANs. Okay, it could. All right, and it might do some goofy stuff that you might not understand yet, but it's in the fact that it's still trying to prevent, and at the end of the day, it's still trying to prevent the multiple forwarding, the infinite loop of forwarding frames. All right, it's trying to prevent that in each and every single VLAN that you create. Okay. All right. So Stp modes and standards. Because the sequence of events over the history of the various Stp family of protocols, vendors like Cisco needed to create their own proprietary features to create the per VLAN spanning tree concept shown in the figure. The sequence resulted in the following. When Stp was only Stp standard back in the 1990s, with 802.1 Delta, Cisco created the Stp-based per VLAN spanning tree plus. So per VLAN spanning tree plus. That's where that terminology PVST plus comes from, is per VLAN spanning tree plus. I know that doesn't roll off the tongue very nicely, but it's per VLAN spanning tree plus. All right. Protocol, which creates one spanning tree instance per VLAN. All right. When the IEEE introduced rapid Rstp, all right, in the 802.1 Delta amendment, the 802.1 Whiskey, in the year 2001, Cisco also created the rapid PVST. So rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus. So again, there's another one that does not roll off the tongue at all. So rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus protocol. So the RPVST, all right, provided more features than the standard Rstp, included one tree per VLAN. So it's doing the same thing as PVST plus. It's creating a Rstp instance inside of each VLAN. All right. So if you think about it, so in each VLAN, so if you had VLAN, VLAN 1, VLAN 100, VLAN 200, all right, inside of one switch, all right. What it's doing is it's creating a Rstp instance for each one. Rstp. All right, it's creating an instance for each VLAN inside of your switch, all right, inside of that one switch, all right, and it's going to be doing the same thing. But it's going to be doing it, again, logically, it's going to be saying, okay, VLAN 1 is its own LAN. Okay, so let's get back to that kind of thinking again. So VLAN 1 is its own local area network. So rapid spanning tree is working on that one local area network. Local area network 1, all right? So it's going to do so it's going to have an instance that's going to take care of just that one LAN. Same thing. LAN 1, local area network 100, Rstp is going to be doing the same thing. It's going to be just taking care of that one local area network, which is local area network 100. Same thing for 2. All right. But again, this is all happening within your one switch. Okay. All right. So, yep. So we read that. The IEEE did not adopt. So the IEEE did not adopt the Cisco PVST plus or the PBST plus into their standards to create multiple stranded trees. Instead, the IEEE created their own different method, which again, it's pretty much the same exact thing as the Cisco proprietary, but the IEEE just created their own, and that's called the multiple spanning tree protocol, so the MSTP. Again, there's so many terminologies that do not roll up the tongue that will just confuse you, but at the end of the day, it all comes, once you start learning it and going over and over it, it gets easier to remember these, okay? All right, that finishes that cup of coffee. We'll grab my big cup. Sorry, I'm gonna have a heart attack one of these days, just off of how much coffee I drink. All right, so this is just showing you a quick timeline. All right, today Cisco switches give us 3 options to configure the spanning tree modes command. All right, which tells the switch which type of STP to use. Note that the switches do not support STP or Rstp with the single tree. So it doesn't support CST, single spanning tree. All right. They can either use Cisco proprietary Rstp, which is Rstp PBST plus. All right. That's per VLAN spanning tree plus. All right. Of the facts that about or the Cisco proprietary and the Rstp based RP at PBST plus. Or the IEEE standard, the MSTP. The table summarizes some of the facts about these standards. So remember, today's switches support PBST plus, PBST plus, and the IEEE MSTP. Okay, so it does not. So today's switches will not just support single tree spanning tree protocol. It won't support single tree spanning tree protocol. Just because the Cisco switches know that you can create multiple VLANs. So because they already know that you can create multiple VLANs and with inside of them, they won't support single spanning tree protocol. They support multiple spanning tree protocol. So that is the per VLAN spanning tree protocol, per VLAN spanning tree plus, and the rapid per plus. Okay, I hope you understood that. Or the IEEE standard, which is the MSTP, the multiple spanning tree protocol. All right. Along with the standard, use on the command, the global configuration mode, the spanning tree mode, and then these are just some of the standards that you can actually use today. So, all right, that's all it's stating right here. So obviously, it does not support the original STP, the 802.1 Delta. All right, it supports PBST, per VLAN spanning tree, multiple VLANs. Okay, it does not support the original Rstp because there's multiple VLANs now. So it does not support the original STP. Does not support the original Rstp. It supports multiple VLAN spanning tree protocol and then multiple rapid spanning tree protocol. And then obviously the 802.1 1S, which is the IEEE multiple spanning tree protocol, MSTP. Okay. All right. MSTP allows the definitions as many multiple spanning tree instance or MSTI, just to make you more confused with more acronyms, as chosen by the network designer, but does not require one pre-bidder. Okay. So here's just a code snippet of what. So again, that using the question mark, it's a godsend. It will help you, choose what will be your next command as you're going along. Okay. All right. Now here's an interesting part of how the PBST plus, how it figures in the multiple VLANs into that 16-bit bridge ID there. So the bridge ID and system ID extension. So to support the idea of multiple spanning trees, whether one per VLAN or simply multiple or as created as MSTP, the protocol must consider the VLAN and VLAN trunking. That only one reason why Rstp and Rstp now exist as part of the 802.1q standard, which defines VLANs and VLANs trunking. All right. To help us make that work, the IEEE standardized the format of the original bridge ID value to help make per VLAN instance of STP and Rstp become a reality. Okay. Originally, the switch bridge ID was formed by combining the switch's 2-bit priority and its 6-byte, so 2-byte priority and its 6-byte MAC address. All right. Now let me just throw this up there. You guys probably already know. I don't have to tell you, but just for those who probably don't know. All right. You have. I'm just gonna go over a bit and a byte. So bit, a byte. So a bit and a byte. All right. Byte, a bit is 4. All right. A byte is 8. All right. So when you see 2 bytes, that equals 8. All right. When you have 6 bytes, that equals 48. All right, because that's 8 times 8. This is, yeah, there'd be 8 times 6. I apologize. 8 times 6. Let me just write 8 times 6, and then 4 times 2. All right. So a bit equals 4. A byte equals 8. So we have a 2-byte priority, so that's 2 bytes. So 2 times 4 is 8. And then this is our MAC address, our 48-digit long MAC address. So it's saying 6, so 6 times 8 would be 48. All right. So there you go. All right. So inside, so originally the switch BIDs was formed by combining the switch's 2-bit priority and the 2-byte priority and the 6-byte MAC address. Their revised rules divided the original priority field into 2 separate fields as shown in the figure. All right, a 4-bit priority field and a 12-bit subfield called the system ID extension, which represented the VLAN ID. All right, so what it's pretty much stating that it takes these the 2 bytes, okay, and it breaks it off, okay? Let me just make sure I'm looking at this right, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because 2, hold on. Yeah, 4, yeah. Yep. Okay. I kind of explained that, but it's the same thing. So, yeah. A bit is 4, a byte is 8. So, it's stating we have 2 bytes, so that's giving us 8. And then 6 bytes, it's giving us 48. Right? Hold on, no. 2 bytes is giving us 16. And then 6 bytes is giving us 48. Okay? Then it's taken out of this 16, it's taken 4 and 12. Okay? Again, it's taken 4 bytes. Okay? So it's taken 4 bytes, 4 and 12 obviously make 16. All right? And it's leaving the 6-byte alone. So it's leaving the entire MAC address. This is the MAC address alone. All right, so it's leaving the MAC address alone. All right, but inside of the priority, okay, again, it's taking 12 bytes. All right, typically, so this is where the priority is going to be. All right. And then this is where it's going to have the VLAN ID extension. All right. I know that's kind of confusing, guys, but this is binary. We're going to get into binary and hex numbers and all that. But this isn't too complicated. I might be making it complicated for you guys. So remember, a bit equals 4, a byte equals 8. Okay. Now, as it describes, it's taken the whole original format. All right, is 8 bytes. All right, it's 8 bytes long. All right, so 8 times 8 is 56. All right, so 8 times 8 is 56. It's pretty much taking so it's taking 16 away from that. All right, which gives us 48. That gives us our MAC address. All right, our MAC address is always 48 bits long. Yeah, 48 bits long. Okay, all right. Then we're leaving, it leaves us with 16 left over. We're gonna take 12 of those. That's where we're gonna generate our VLAN ID, and then we're gonna take 4 of those, and that's what's gonna get our priority number, our priority number from. All right, very good. All right, let's move down a little bit more. All right, Cisco switches let us configure the bridge ID, but only the priority pod. So it only allows us to mess with the priority pod. The switch fills in the burnt in, so the switch, you can't mess with the MAC address. Okay. The switch fills in the universal MAC address with the system as the system ID. It also plugs the VLAN ID of the VLAN itself. So it's going to take care of the VLAN ID by what you've already assigned. So you created the VLAN. So whatever you created that VLAN is, that's where you're going to get that 12 bytes from for your VLAN ID. Okay. So it's going to get your switch's MAC address, which is your 48 bits. Then it's going to take that VLAN ID, whatever you made that VLAN out to be, that's where you're going to get those 12 bits from. You can adjust the priority number though, okay? All right. Yep, the only part you configure the engineer the 4-bit priority field. Okay. However, configuring the number to put in the priority field may be one of the strangest things to configure on a Cisco's router or switch. As shown on the top figure, in 10.4, the priority field was originally 16-bit number, which represented a decimal from 0 to 65,535. But of that history, the configuration command, spanning tree, VLAN ID, so whatever you're going to make your VLAN ID number, priority, whatever you want your priority to be, requires a number between 0 and 65,535. But not just any number in that range will suffice. It must be a multiple of 4,096, as emphasized in the text shown. Okay. So we're just running that. He's running that command, and he's putting the question mark just to see some information about what he can do next. Okay. So this next list shows us how the easiest way to think about how this is breaking down. So the table lists all configurable values for Stp and Rstp priorities. However, don't worry about memorizing the values. Instead, the table lists the values to emphasize 2 points about binary values. The first 4 bits in each value differ, but the last 12 bits remain as binary zeros. So what it is pretty much doing, and this is a super great illustration. So what it's pretty much stating is, for right now, that these 12 bits right here, that's gonna be the VLAN ID. Okay, so you don't have to get hung up on that. Right here though, from here all the way down, this is where you can adjust. Okay, now if you were to go on your calculator and look up 4,096, you're gonna come up with 00 0001 0000 0000 0000. In binary, that would equal 4096. Okay? Again, if you go on your binary calculator and you were to figure what 8190, what decimal 8192 equals, you would get 0010 0000 00000000, and that would equal the 8192. Okay, can you tell where we're going with everything? So because we can only alter these 4 bits, we can only alter these four bits. That's all we're allowed to alter. Okay, so if that's all we're allowed to alter inside of this 16-bit field, okay, because it's given us a 16-bit field, okay, that 16-bit field is represented here, okay, there's our 16-bit field, all right, and again, we're only allowed to alter out of that 16-bit field is these 4 bits, all right, these other 12 bits, though, these 12 bits, these are going to be assigned the Vlan ID, okay? So the last 12 is going to be assigned that Vlan ID, okay? But the first 4 are the priority, and that's what we can adjust, all right? So in binary, since we're just taking 1 step to the next, so we're taking 1 step, so here's 000, we're going to put a 1, 000, 0. So again, we're taking the next, this is just binary, 0, 1, 0, 0. That's going to equal 8192. Okay, cool. Next step in binary, 1, 1, 0, 0. Okay, because of the 16 bits, though, that's going to equal, 100,000 to 2288. Okay, and then again, we're going to take the next step in binary, which is 0, 0, 1, 0. But again, we got a 16 bit number. That's going to equal 16,384. Same thing, 20,480. Next step, 24,576, so on and so forth, okay? All right, till we get to the very last, all right, our very last one we can select, which is 61,440, which is 100, which is 111, 000, 00000, 00000, okay? And that's going to give us the amount that we're looking for. Okay, all right. Hope that kind of helps understand how we can affect the priority field. Okay, all right. We can only affect these first 4 bits. All right, all right. Let's continue on here. All right. Note that while you can set the priority to any of the 16 decimal values in the table, Cisco provides a convenient means to create a primary and secondary root concept without configuring an actual number. In most LAN designs, only a small number of switches would be a good candidate to go. Could be a good candidate to even be the root switch based on where the switch is within the topology. Think of the preferred switch as the primary switch, and the next best option as being the secondary switch. Then to configure those 2 switches to be the best likely switch to be root. All right, so if you're thinking about your topology, you don't have to get crazy about trying to think about these numbers and which one you want to pick. Cisco's made it easy. Which one's your primary? Which one's your secondary? Okay. All right. All right. These 2 commands cause the switch to make choices of priority value, but then store the chosen priority value in the spanning tree by Vlan X priority value command. The command with root primary and root secondary does not appear in the configurations. When configuring root primary, the switch looks at the priority of the current root and chooses either A 24,576 or B 4096 less than the current root priority. So it chooses A or B. All right. Remember, we're taking a jump by 4096. 4096. All right. All right. Then the current value of the priority. If the current root priority is 24,576 or less, to the configuration instead, when configuring root secondary always results in the switch using the priority of 28,672, with the assumption that the value would be less than the other switches that use the default. So the default you'll see is 32,768 or higher than any switch configured as root. So when you configure one as primary, it's going to establish itself as either 24,576 or a one less than that. Okay, depending on if so if you've already have if STP or if Rstp has already done its convergence or it's picked a root, you then go back in and configure root primary. Okay, what it's going to do is it's going to take a look. It's going to be looking at the root cost. Okay, it's going to say, okay, either I assign this one that the network admin just assigned me. I'm going to take on either 24,576 or less than, or take on and compare that against what the root is already at. So if the root is already at 24,576, it's going to go under that 4096. It's going to pick that number. So then it becomes the primary now. Okay. And then as it states, the secondary is going to take on the just the generic cost of 28,762. So then it would fall into the zone as being secondary, okay? Because by default, though, all the other switches are going to have the default cost at 32,768, okay? So that's by using those commands, root primary and root secondary. What it's just doing, it's figuring out, okay, I'm going to take. It's not going to show the root primary, root secondary in the show commands. It says that it won't show that, but it's going to adjust the actual cost value of the root cost. Okay. All right. How switches use priority and system ID extension. Cisco Catalyst switches configure the priority value using a number that represents a 16-bit value. However, the system ID extension exists as the lower order 12 bits in the same number. The next topic works through connecting those ideas. When the switch builds a bridge ID to use for Rstp in the VLAN, it combines the configured priority with VLAN ID and the VLAN of that VLAN. Okay, instinctively, the configured priority results in a 16-bit priority that always ends with 12 binary zeros. The fact makes the process combining values to create bridge IDs a little bit simpler for the switch as possible, to make a little simpler for the network engineer once you understand it all. So again, it's trying to make the concept a little bit easier, because it gets a little bit fuzzy. As you guys can tell, I'm stumbling over my own words, just trying to describe it to you guys. But in all sakes, again, it's just going back as the figure shows right here. You got the priority, all right? And then you have the VLAN. So you have your priority, all right? Your system extension, all right? Then you have your VLAN ID, all right? So 9 decimal in binary would be 1001. Go on your binary calculator, you put 1001, it's going to equal decimal 9, okay? So if your priority was 1000, okay, look at that. It's just taking a step down. Now it's picking up the VLAN ID now, which is 101. You're going to be left with the 1000. I can't say 1000. You're left with 1000000000001001. Okay? That's how it's going to equate to that number. All right? It's just showing everything in zeros. Again, just to make this a little bit easier for us to understand. because again, I'm probably fuzzing it up with how I'm describing it, but I hope by the illustration here, this is a great illustration, guys, a super great illustration to how this is working. So we have, again, I think I have to touch on this one more time. We have our configuration priority. Priority is set. Okay, our priority is set. Now we have to pick up our Vlan ID. Let's pick up our Vlan ID now. So we picked up our Vlan ID. So again, we picked up our priority right here. We took that next step down. We picked up our Vlan ID. Now we have to combine our Vlan ID with our priority. This is it's taking decimal and turning it into binary. Okay? All right? All right. As it turns out, the process shown just sums up two numbers, both binary and decimal. See the example referred to the upcoming, which demonstrates the following details. The output shows details about VLAN 9. Yep. The root switch configured. So there's the priority. The local switch has, it's just going over commands now. All right. I don't want to fuzz things up as we're getting into it, okay? So again, here's just the show spanning tree VLAN. It's just giving us the show command. The show commands, again, very important. All right. Here's the priority now. That's too big. Make that smaller. So there's our priority. All right. We have our VLAN, so we're just going to be picking up that VLAN ID now, okay? Again, which is 9. All right? All right? And then this is giving us our new... Oh, okay. Okay. So... what we're doing already, which ID? Hold on. I don't want to confuse. I think I'm confusing myself here. So here's our bridge ID. All right, and by default it's set. Remember, it's always going to be set to the 32,768. That's just default. All right. Now, if we simply just add 9 to that, that's going to equal out to the decimal number of 32,777. Okay. So 32,768 plus 9 will equal the 32,777. All right. That will be the priority. All right. All right. This would be the bridge ID priority number. All right. And let me just read this now. All right. All right. I see what it's doing. All right. So give me 1 second, guys. My monkeys are getting out of control on me. Sorry, my monkeys were getting out of control on me again. Those crazy monkeys. All right. So to get back to where we were, so what he did in this demonstration, he went ahead and he set the priority, the root, all right, to this number. All right. So he went and said, this switch is going to be primary. So remember, primary, when you set it to this command, all right, the root primary, what it's going to do is going to take up the 2456. So let's remember the 2456. Let's write this down. So when you set something to primary, that's going to equal the 24,576. Okay. And by default, the bridge, the default though will always be 32,768. Okay. So let's use some of this logic to help me kind of explain. So here we go. So since he set that root to primary, he's going to pick up the 24,576. Okay. Then he's going to add decimal 9. All right. That's how he comes up with 24,585. All right. All right. And same thing over here. This is just default 32,768 on the local switch, 32,768. Okay. So let me erase these, and then we can take a look back at this command line interface again. All right. So priority, get my pen again, is the 24. No, I wanted my highlighter. The 24,585. All right. So you 24,585. So you just plus 9 of that. Now that's how you get the 24,585. The default of the 32,768, you plus 9 of that, and that's how he's getting the 32,777. Okay. All right. Again, I hope that this is starting to make sense. Again, it's a little bit fuzzy because we're dealing with so many different because it feels like it's kind of like all over the place, but it makes sense because it has to break it down like this for the possibility for the multiple spanning trees over the VLANs, okay? All right? And that's the reason why it gets this complicated now. All right? All right, Rstp methods to support multiple spanning trees. Although the history and configurations might make the bridge port ID priority idea seem a bit convoluted. So it's even saying it might seem a bit convoluted. Having an extra 12-bit field in the bridge ID works well in practice because it can also be used to identify the VLAN ID. VLAN ID range from 1 to 4094. Now, remember, we can have VLANs from 1 to 4094, okay? Requiring 12 bits, all right? All right. For the purpose of the discussions, focus on the standard Rstp and its Cisco proprietary cousin, VSTP Plus, so Rapid Per VLAN Spanning Tree Plus, all right? Both use the Rapid Spanning Tree mechanism as discussed in the Chapter 9 Spanning Tree Protocol concepts, but the Rapid Per VLAN Spanning Tree Plus uses mechanisms for every VLAN, while standard Rapid Spanning Tree Protocol does not. So how do their methods differ? Okay. All right. So this is just going to discuss how single Rstp differs from rapid VLAN spanning tree. Rapid Per VLAN spanning tree plus differs from just general rapid spanning tree protocol. All right. Rstp creates one tree, the common spanning tree, the CST, while Rapid Per VLAN Spanning Tree Plus creates one tree each LAN. So again, that went back to that earlier illustration that I drew on the board, where it in each VLAN instance, it's creating another instance of Rstp within that VLAN. Okay, where Rstp did not. It did not work on multiple VLANs. No? What's wrong? All right. So RSTP sends one set of RSTP messages. RSTP sends one set of RSTP messages BDUs in the network, no matter of VLANs, while RSTP sends one set of messages per VLAN. All right. So it's pretty much stating that RSTP plus sends multiple messages. It sends a message per VLAN, where standard RSTP does not. All right, because again, standard RSTP does not recognize multiple VLANs. Okay, all right. RSTP and RSVPST plus uses different designated MAC addresses. RSTP with multicast address. Yep, and address defined by the EEE. And RST rapid per VLAN standard spanning tree plus with multicast address. So it's just going over. It uses, these are the default. All right. So rapid spanning tree, rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus. These are the addresses. All right. Chosen that it's going to be using. All right. All right. While transmitting messages on VLAN trunks, RSTP sends the message in the native VLAN with no VLAN header tag, again, because it doesn't recognize multiple VLANs. All right. Where RSTP Plus sends each VLAN messages inside the VLAN. For instance, the BDUs about VLAN 9 have the 802.1.q header. Remember the 802.1q, that is the trunking, that is the trunking protocol. That's what the IEEE that's the trunking protocol, okay? The 802.1q header defines trunk encapsulation, okay? All right, header that lists the VLAN 9. Okay. Rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus adds an extra type. All right, so there's that term, TLV, type length value. So it adds an extra type length value in the BPDU that identifies the VLAN ID, while RSTP does not. Again, because it doesn't identify multiple VLANs. All right. Both view 16-bit priority of having a 12-bit system ID extension. Remember, while RSTP settings to be all 0, meaning no VLANs. Okay. All right. So again, the biggest difference is because RSTP does not recognize multiple VLANs. That, at the end of the day, that's it. All right. Even though it got a little complicated, everything I just said, just remember, standard RSTP does not recognize multiple VLANs. Okay. It doesn't create multiple instances on each VLAN. All right. All right. In other words, standard RSTP behaves in a VLAN as VLANs don't exist. Exactly. Like I've been saying this whole time. All right. While Cisco RPVDSD Plus integrates VLAN information into their entire process. So that's why the switches today, the Cisco switches today, they only recognize rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus, because of the fact that there are going to be multiple VLANs within that switch, or you can create multiple VLANs within that switch. All right. Other RSTP configurations in this chapter. This chapter does not attempt to work through all the configuration options available for RSTP. However, many of the configuration settings may be intuitive now that you know quite a bit about the protocol. This final topic in the first section of the chapter summarizes a few of those configuration concepts. As a reminder, for those interested in continuing onto the CCNP Enterprise, you might be interested in reading more about the RSTP configurations and the comparison website. So we'll be diving into that because obviously we're going to be going, again, once we get CCNA, we're going to be going after DevNet and then CCNP. All right, we're going to go for the full battle rattle. We want it all. We want to be network engineers, guys. All right, we want big dollar salaries. That's what we're going after, guys. All right, and I want you guys again to take this adventure along with me. All right. So switch protocols, the global command spanning tree, VLAN, yep. Let's the engineer set the VLAN priority, primary and secondary route switches, the global command spanning tree, VLAN, you make the VLAN route, primary and secondary. So those are just the commands that, so you're going to be able to, the spanning tree, VLAN X priority, Y. So that's, again, you're setting the VLAN priority. The VLAN X, you're setting whatever VLAN you want it to be. So that is, we'll say, for instance, VLAN 100 priority, whatever you want that priority to be. Remember, it has to be in the increment of 4,096. All right? It has to be in the increment of 4,096. All right? The second command, that is the spanning tree VLAN X. So again, whatever you want, whatever that VLAN is, we're going to say, for instance, that VLAN is VLAN 100. Root, all right, primary, secondary. Whatever you want that switch to be. Do you want that switch to be the primary, or do you want that switch to be the secondary? Okay? Remember, you're setting these, all right, these switches to do what you want them to do. All right, port cost. All right, now you're in the first two commands were in the global configuration command. All right, now this is in the actual sub interface command. All right, so spanning tree, you're going to identify the VLAN and then whatever the cost you want that to be. All right, so it can be, so that way it could, so you want to designate that particular port to be root port or designated port. All right, all right, all right. Now we're going to be taking the dive into Ethernet channels. If I could scroll. There we go. Let me just clear my board real quick. All right. Take a sip of my water. All right. Configuring layer 2 Ethernet channels. As introduced in the chapter, two neighboring switches can treat multiple parallel links between each other as a single logical link called an Ethernet channel. Without Ethernet channel, a switch treats each physical port as an independent port, applying max learning, forwarding, and Stp logic per physical port. With Ethernet channel, though, the switch applies those same processes to a group of physical ports as one entity. The Ethernet channel, without Ethernet channel with parallel links between two switches, Stp Rstp would block all links except one. But with Ethernet channel, the switch can use all links, load balancing the traffic over those links. So pretty much what we kind of covered this last night when we discussed it. So we'll have two switches. All right. We'll have a link, add a link here. All right. Now that's logically and physically, we have one link now. All right. With Ethernet channel, what we can do is we can have multiple links. Okay. We can bundle those, all right, into an Ethernet channel. All right, or a port channel, or a port group, port channel. All right, and then now the switches will look at all these ports again as one logical interface. Okay, instead of it being 4 single interfaces. When we bundle them together in an Ethernet channel, it is now, the switch is now going to use it. Its logic is going to change. Well, its logic is not going to change, but it's going to say, okay, these are now one actual interface. Though they are 4 interfaces, logically now they're one. Okay, so that's what this next section is going to be getting into. Okay. All right. Note all references to Ethernet channel in this chapter refer to layer 2 Ethernet channels, not layer 3 Ethernet channels as discussed in chapter 17, IP routing and LAN. So we're going to get into layer 3 Ethernet channels as we get further into our discussion, as we get further into our studies, okay? CCNA 200-301 exam topics include both layer 1 and layer 3 Ethernet channels. So it's very important that we learn about both, okay? All right. Ethernet channels may be one of the most challenging switch features to make work. First, the configurations have several options, so you have to remember the details of which options work together. Second, the switch also requires a variety of other interface settings to match along the links in the channel. So you have to know those settings as well. So what it is stating is to make this Ethernet channel work, all these individual interfaces all have to have the same actual settings on them individually, so they can actually work together in a group. Okay, they can have multiple different settings. Like you can have some interfaces as trunking interfaces and some as access interfaces. Either they're all going to be access or they're all going to be trunking. You can't have anything different. Same with duplex and speed. You can't have some with half duplex and some with full duplex. Same thing with speed. You can't have some at 1,000 megabytes per second and some at 100 megabytes per second. They all have to have matching speed, duplex. They all have to be either accessing or trunking ports, okay? All the settings have to match for an Ethernet channel to actually become an Ethernet channel, okay? All right, this section shows how to configure layer 2 Ethernet channel. First, through manual static configurations and then allowing dynamic protocols to create the channel. This section closes with some information about some common configuration issues that occur with layer 2 Ethernet channels, okay? Configuring a manual layer 2 Ethernet channel. To configure a layer 2 Ethernet channel so that all the ports always attempt to be part of the channel, simply add the correct channel group configuration command to each physical interface on each switch, all with the keyword on. All right, and all with the same number. All right, the on keyword tells the switches to place all physical interfaces into the Ethernet channel, and the number identifies the port channel interface number that the interface should be part of. Now, last night when we labbed this up, I created on each switch that we had 3 switches, same type of lab we're going to create tonight. But I was successful at creating an Ethernet channel because I went into each interface and interface by interface and by interface, set up every single exact channel group on every single one that I wanted it to be in the particular channel group on each and every switch, one by one, and then we got them all to work. We got spanning tree protocol to identify them all, and it worked perfectly. All right. So before getting into the configuration verifications, however, you need to start using three terms synonymous. All right. And this is what I was saying in the beginning. Ethernet channel, port channel, and channel group. We have to use these terms synonymous because they can get confusing. All right. Hold on one more time. Emojis are getting crazy. Crazy monkeys. They scream to the top of their lungs. The top of their lungs. All right. Yeah, so oddly enough, iOS uses channel group configuration command, but then it displays the iOS status. All right. Show Ethernet command, and then the output of the show command refers to the Ethernet. The show command refers to neither Ethernet channel nor channel group, but it refers to port channel. So let's write down these 3 terms. So we got ether, channel. We have port channel. All right, and then we have channel group. All right, so to configure the Ethernet channel, on the iOS, we're going to be assigning it the channel group. Okay, all right. To show Ethernet command though, all right. The show Ethernet command though, well, it won't show either Ethernet channel. It won't show channel group. What it's going to show though is port channel. All right. So that's why we have to identify these three terms. So Ethernet channel, port channel, and channel group. So when we're configuring it, we're configuring the channel group. When we want to show the Ethernet channel, we use the show Ethernet channel, but it's going to display though. When it displays, it's going to display as port channel. I know that's confusing, but that's what it is. Okay. So here's just some key topics. So add the channel group number mode command to the interface configuration mode. All right. Use all the same numbers and commands on the same switch, but the channel group number on the neighboring switch can differ. So it's just stating that you can have different number channel groups on different switches. Okay. So, but I wouldn't do that. I would keep everything pretty much the same. That's just me. Keep everything tight. Keep your network tight. All right. Tight. All right. Now it's just going to show you some configurations. So here we go. So we moved from it moved from, remember, enable mode to global configuration mode. Then we gave it the interface 5014. Then we moved into the sub interface 5014 sub interface. Now he's giving it the channel group 1. He selected 1. He's saying mode on. All right. Now from there though, he's moving into the interface 50415 now, and he's giving it again the same command, channel group 1 mode on. So what he did was he's created on 5014 and 5015, he created channel group 1. All right, so he logically took those two interfaces and combined them into one port channel. Okay, and then showing the spanning tree. So he already made a Vlan 3. Vlan 3 was already made prior. Okay, I know it doesn't show that. All right, so it's showing the port channel. All right, port channel 1. All right. Show Ethernet channel summary. And then it's just going to show you the port PO, port channel. And then it's going to show you the interface. So 5014 and 5015 are inside of that port channel now. Okay? I know that's, again, a little bit confusing, but you'll see when we get onto the command line interface. All right. Take a few moments to take a look at the output, the show commands, that example. First, you'll see the show spanning tree command that lists the POS 1, short for port channel 1 as the interface exiting because of the channel group command. Again, it's just stating all these facts that don't get the terminology, don't get confused over the multiple different ways it's using the same exact word, but it's using to describe the same thing in 3 different ways. So even though it's an Ethernet channel, when you're configuring it, you're configuring it as a channel group, but when you want to display it, it's going to display as a port channel. Okay. All right. Configuring dynamic Ethernet channels. In addition to manual configurations, Cisco switches also support 2 different configuration options that then use dynamic protocol to negotiate whether a particular link becomes a part of an Ethernet channel or not. Basically, the configuration enables a protocol for a particular channel group number. At that point, the switch can use the protocol to send messages to and from the neighboring switch and discover whether the configuration setting passes all checks. If a given physical link passes, the link is added to the Ethernet link to the Ethernet channel and used. If not, it passes it down in a down state and is not used until the configuration inconsistency is resolved. Most Cisco catalyst switches support Cisco proprietary port aggregation protocol. So here's a nice word, PAG, or PAGA, PAGP, port aggregation protocol. All right, PAGP, port aggregation protocol. Woo! I love these words, man. Most Cisco switches support the Cisco proprietary. Remember how I said there was a Cisco proprietary, and then there's an IEEE one. So the Cisco proprietary is port aggregation protocol, and the IEEE link standard aggregation protocol. So that's the IEEE is the link aggregation control protocol. So there's that terminology, LACP, and you have PAGP. All right, which is Cisco's. Again, Cisco's is port aggregation protocol, and the IEEE's is the link aggregation control protocol. All right, based on the IEEE standard 802.3 alpha delta. All right, although differences exist between the two, to the depth discussed here, they both accomplish the same task, negotiating so that only links that pass the configuration checks are actually used in the Ethernet channel. One difference to note of the link aggregation control protocol does support more links in the channel. All right, so the Cisco proprietary only supports 8, where the IEEE supports a maximum of 16. So you can have a maximum of 16, all right, actual physical links, all right, set up with LACP, where Cisco's PAGPs has a maximum of 8, all right. With LACPs, with the link aggregate control protocol, only 8 can be active at one time, with the others waiting to be used if any of the links fail. All right. To configure either protocol on a switch, use the channel group configuration command on each switch, but with the key words that either means use this protocol or begin negotiation, or use this protocol and wait for the other switch to begin negotiation. All right, as shown, desirable in auto keywords enable PAG, and the active passive enables LACP. All right, let's read that again. Woo! Man, this is getting deep in the woods now. Okay, so use this protocol and begin negotiation, or use this protocol and wait for the other switch to begin negotiation. Okay, so we have desirable auto, which enables the Cisco port aggregate protocol, or the active and passive, all right, which enables the link aggregate protocol. All right, with these options, at least one side has to begin the negotiation. In other words, the port aggregate protocol, at least one of the two sides must use desirable, and with link aggregate protocol, at least one of the two sides must be active. All right. Woo! All right. So here's a little quick snip of that one. If we're using the PAG, I'm just going to call it PAG. On one switch, we have to have one side at least as desirable, and then one side we can have set either to desirable or auto. All right. If we have one side with it configured with desirable, if we just have the other side configured with auto, it will create that channel group. Okay. With LACP, if we have one side, we have to have at least one side of active. We have to say one side is active. All right, and then on the other switch, we have to have at least it set at least at passive. Okay. All right. So we have desirable in auto for Cisco, and we have active and passive for the IEEE. Let's remember that again. For Cisco, for the PAG, we have desirable and auto. For the IEEE LACP, we have active and passive. Okay? And that will create those channel groups. Okay? Woo! Man, it's getting deep. All right. All right. Note, do not use the on parameter on one end in either auto or desirable or for LACP active or passive on the neighboring switch. So it's saying do not use the on command now, because the on command it'll enable PADG or LACP. So that's what it's pretty much stating. So if we were to do the channel group, select whatever number and then on, that would actually disable PADG or LACP. All right. So for example, if we, in the design and the figure, imagine both physical interfaces on both sides were configured with the channel group mode desirable interface subcommand. As a result, the two switches would negotiate and create the Ethernet channel. Show and the example, show the interface of the configuration with the command show interface port channel, show Ethernet 1 port channel. The command confirms that the protocol pad in use because the desirable keyword was configured, the list on the interface. So it's showing that, again, here we go. We're using the protocol patch, all right? And because we had set the states as desirable, all right? But we would have to set, remember, desirable and what was it, auto? Let's take a look again. Let's go back up. So we have to have one, we have to make sure we ensure that we're setting at least one side as desirable, and then we can have the other switch just set at auto, okay? Or we can have it as desirable too, and that will make that would make the channel group, all right? And if we were using LACP, we have to make sure we have one side is active and then one side is either active or passive, okay? But we can use passive on that side too, okay? All right, but we can't use the terminology on now because that would disable PADG or LACP. All right. Physical interface configuration in Ethernet channel. All right. Even when the channel group command have all been configured correctly, other configuration settings can prevent a switch from using the physical ports in the Ethernet channel. Even physical ports manually configured to be part of a channel. All right. The next topic examines those reasons. First, before using a physical port in an Ethernet channel, the switches compare the new physical ports configurations to the existing ports in the channel. The new physical interface settings must be the same as the existing port settings. Otherwise, the switch does not add the new link to the list of approved and working interfaces in the channel. That is, the physical interface remains configured as part of the port channel, but it is not used as part of the channel, often being placed in some non-working state. So what it's stating is that new interface that you want to add to that port channel, that Ethernet channel, if it is not set to the exact match of the existing interfaces that are already in that port channel, that Ethernet channel, you can still add it. It'll still allow you to add it there, but it's going to put that interface, though, it's not going to use that interface. It's going to put it in a non-working state. All right. So you have to ensure that interface that you're adding to that port channel, that interface matches the settings you already have on the other interfaces that already exist on that port channel. Okay. All right. Here's a list of some of the things to check. So remember, we talked about the speed duplex. Again, you have to make sure that either they're all access ports or they're all trunk ports. Yep, trunk ports. If they're trunk, the native VLAN, STP interface settings. In addition, switches check the settings of the neighboring switch too. The switches either used the port aggregate protocol or the link aggregate protocol if already used, or the Cisco discovery. If using manual configurations when checking neighbors, all settings except the STP settings must match. Okay. Here's an example. So it's pretty much stating that there is a mismatch. Okay. So you're going to get warnings that you got some kind of a mismatch, okay? And then it's going to throw those interfaces. Actually, on this, it actually puts the whole port channel in a state of down, okay? And it's throwing the actual interface, all right, into the state of now down to, so it's just put everything into the actual down state. All right. Yeah. So the messages at the top of the example specify the state of what the switches does when determining whether the interface settings match. In the case switch 1 detects the different STP costs, switch 1 does not use gigabit 0-1, does not use gigabit 0-1, does not use gigabit 0-2, and even places them into the error disabled state. The switch also puts the port channel into the error disabled state. As a result, the port channel is not operational and the physical interface are not operational. So it pretty much is, it's put that whole entire port channel and all those interfaces in the error disabled state. Again, they're not operational now. Okay, so that's why you have to ensure that all your settings match. All right, to solve this problem, you must reconfigure the physical interfaces to use the same STP settings. In addition, the port channel and the physical interfaces must be shut down and then no shutdown. So you have to go into them and manually shut them down and then manually reboot them back up. So that's given it the shutdown command and then the no shutdown command. Remember, the no shutdown command brings the interfaces back up. All right, to recover the error disabled state, note that when the switch applies the no shutdown and no shutdown command to the port channel, it applies the same command to the physical interfaces just do the shutdown, no shutdown on the port channel interface. So it's just saying you just have to go into that port channel interface as long as those two actual physical interfaces are part of that port channel, and you can give the actual port channel interface the shutdown, no shutdown command, and that'll bring up those interfaces within that port channel. Okay. All right. Ethernet channel load distribution. Using layer 2 Ethernet channels, a switch's MAC learning process associates MAC addresses with the port channel interface and not the underlying physical ports. Later, when the switch makes a forwarding decision and sends a frame or a port channel interface, the switch must do more work to decide which specific physical port to forward the frame. The iOS documentation refers to those rules as Ethernet channel load distribution or load balancing. So this is just giving us a nice look at, so this port, so this is a port channel. All right, let me erase that, garbage. So you got to figure that this is a port channel. This whole entire thing is port channel 1, all right? And inside port channel 1, they've assigned 4 physical interfaces to port channel 1. So inside of port channel 1, you have gigabit 0-1, gigabit 0-2, gigabit 0-3, and gigabit 0-4, all right? So it states that the switch has to, this is where it's going to go into how the switch actually makes the decision, which actual physical now port it's going to send that data out of, okay? It has to make a decision physically now on where to send that data out of, okay? Let's learn how it does that. All right. Configuration options for Ethernet channel and load distribution. Ethernet channel load distribution makes the choice for which frames based on various numeric values found in the layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4 headings. The process uses one configurable setting as input. The load distribution method as defined with the port channel load balancing method global configuration mode. So when we're in global configuration mode, that's where we can set the port channel load balancing command, and then we apply the method that we want. All right. The process then performs some match against the fields identified to be configured. Okay. So here's a list of the common methods. However, note some switches may support only MAC-based methods or only MAC or IP methods. So it's just stating that on some switches only support MAC, source MAC address, destination MAC, both source and MAC, source IP, destination, both destination and source IP. And then it gets into some TCP, UDP port stuff as well. So what it's saying
And it's going to get into it right now. So let me erase my board so we can mark it up once we get there, all right? To appreciate why you might want to use different methods, you need to consider the results of how switches make their choices. The decision here focuses on the results and not the logic, okay? The decisions here focuses on the results, not the logic. Because logic remains internally on the switch, and Cisco does not document how each switch model of iOS version works internally. So they're pretty much stating that Cisco's not going to tell you how the logic of these switch works because they don't want you making a Cisco switch. Okay, cool. However, the various load distribution algorithms do share common goals. All right, so here we go. So let's go over some of these key topics here. All right. To cause all messages in a single application flow to use the same link in the channel rather than being sent over different links, doing so means that the switch will not inadvertently reorder the messages sent in the application flow by sending one message over a busy link and then that has a queue of waiting messages while immediately sending the link messages out an unused link. So it's pretty much it's not gonna cause miscommunication by doing that. Integrate the load distribution algorithm work into the hardware forwarding ASIC, so the ASIC chip, all right, so that load distribution works just as quickly as the work to forward any other frame. To use all active links in the Ethernet channel, adjusting to additions and removal of active links over time, within the constraints of other goals, balance the traffic across links. All right. In short, the algorithm first intends to avoid message reordering, making use of the switch forwarding ASIC, and use all active ports. However, the algorithm does not attempt to send the exact same message, the exact same number of bits over each link over time. The algorithm does try to balance the traffic, but always within the constraints of their goal. Okay, you're the one who's setting the goal. Okay, whether load distribution method you choose, the method identifies fields in the message header. Any message in the same application flow will then have the same value in the fields used by the load distribution algorithm, and will always be forwarded over that same link. For example, when a user connects to a website, the web server may return thousands of packets to the client. Those thousands of packets should flow over the same Ethernet link. Okay, so if we chose the method source MAC address, so if we wanted messages to always use the same source MAC address over that port channel that's using load balancing. All right, say we had port channel 1. So what it'll do is it'll take all the source MACs that are going to port channel 1 and it'll flow it, even though, again, the port channel 1 is now it's logically one actual interface with multiple interfaces in it physically. When you set the method of load balancing, it will use those multiple physical interfaces inside of that port group and then send messages. It will load balance those messages throughout those multiple physical links as you set the goal. So the goal, as it describes here, as source MAC. So source MAC, if we have source MAC, what it'll do if we're getting multiple messages, so we have, all of them going to the all ones MAC address. So it'll just, for instance, say, all right, so I'm getting messages for the all ones MAC. I'm just going to send it off the first interface, and then if I start getting messages for the all twos, I'll send it out twos. I'm not saying this is exactly how it works. I'm just saying, for instance, this is how this is the logic of how that algorithm is working. Okay. All right, for instance, with load distribution method, source MAC, meaning source MAC address, all frames within the same MAC address flows over one link. The figure shows the idea in the pseudo MAC address, with the load distributed setting frames with the MAC address 1 over link 1. source for 2. Again, that's just for instance. It's not saying yes, that's how it's working. It's just saying, for instance, that is the logic of how it actually works. Okay. Cisco provides a variety of load distribution options so that the engineer can examine the flow in the network with ideas and findings with fields, have the most variety in their values, source, destination MAC, IP, transport layer, port numbers. The variety in the values in these fields, the better the balancing effect, and the lower chance of sending disappropriate amounts of traffic over one link. So again, you're just trying to even out how much traffic's going over your particular links. That's what you're trying to do. All right. The algorithm focuses on the low order bits in the field in the header, because of the low order bits typically defer to the most in the real network, while the higher order bits do not differ much. But focusing on the lower order bits, the algorithm achieves better balancing over traffic links. Okay. All right. The effects of Ethernet channel load distribution algorithm. All right. In the figure details a new Ethernet channel that will be used in 2 examples to show the effect of load distribution. The example will focus on a frame sent by switch 1 in the figure, showing the use of the test Ethernet load balancing exec command. The command asks the switch to consider some addresses or ports and answers the question which link would you use when forwarding the message when the address. Okay, so it's just going through that. All right. Oh, scroll too far again. All right. The example shows how the switch 1 distributes the traffic when using the source MAC load distribution. The example lists the output of three of the test Ethernet load balance commands. But note that all 3 commands use the same source MAC. As a result, the answer from each command refers to the interface gigabit. So it always going to refer to the same one. All right. So show MAC, show the internal load balancing. It's using the source MAC as its goal. Okay, so that's its goal. So this goal for this load balancing is source MAC. Okay. The test Ethernet channel load balancing interface. Remember, port channel 1. All right, MAC address. All right. It's just pulling out these MAC address. All right. So it's stating that it would select the same interface out of the same port channel. All right, for all these 3 different MAC addresses that it's getting. Okay. All right. All 3 tests list the same outgoing physical interface because the method uses only the source MAC address, and all 3 tests use the same MAC addresses. All 3 tests use different destination MAC with the different. So here we go. So all 3 tests use the different destination MAC with different low order bits, but that had no impact on the choice. Because remember, since he added it, since he put it as source, what it did was it used it all going out the same source. All right, instead of the destination. All right. So here we go. So now he changed it to the destination source destination MAC. Okay. Woo! And now it chose different interfaces on the different actual source on the destination MACs now. So because now we're using destination MACs, the algorithm is now more intelligently load balancing these frames over these actual physical interfaces now. Okay. All right. So there. So again, it's the algorithm is better. It's better choosing how to distribute these frames over these interfaces when we choose the destination MAC. Okay. All right. Yep. So here we go. We come to the end of the chapter. Here's some key topics for us to. Woo! This was a tough chapter for us to get through, but I think we got through it pretty good. All right. Some of the key topics, guys. Typical design choices of which switch should be made. Root view of load balancing benefits of PBS ST plus, STP standards and configuration options. Show the format of the SYST ID extension in the STP priority field. Facts about Rstp VST plus methods versus Rstp. Steps to manually configure Ethernet channels. Items on switch compares to in new physical port configurations to existing ports. Okay, some key terms for us to know. Rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus. Per VLAN spanning tree plus. System ID extension. Port aggregate protocol. Link aggregate protocol. Port channel. Channel group. Ethernet channel. Channel group load distribution. Primary route. Secondary route. And here's just some commands, okay? If you guys can excuse me just one moment. I'm just gonna use run to the bathroom real quick, guys. Just excuse me for one moment, okay? Switch over to the scene. I'll be right back, guys. Hold on. Thanks, everybody, giving me that couple minutes. I just had to run real quick. I'm back. So we're gonna dive into we're gonna take the dive into Cisco Modeling Lab now. All right, and we're gonna again, we're gonna do what we normally do. We're gonna lab some of these. We're gonna lab this up. All right. And again, this is what helps me. This is what helps me get that hands-on knowledge, guys. That again helps me imprint this into my memory banks. Okay. Thinking off real quick. Yeah. This. Good. This scene now. There we go. All right. All right. So we're over on Cisco Modeling Lab. Let's build a new lab. All right. Let's do that, guys. Let's build a new lab. All right. Yeah. Let's grab some switchies. Let me just go to my dash. Yeah, okay. I already turned off that other. I turned off that other lab I was working on earlier. Now, let's give us some names. Switch one. And we need to add some more interfaces too. So let's add 4 more. Cool. 4 more you too. Let's go to Noid information. Let's give you the name of switch
2. You switch. All right, let's just make sure I got plenty of interfaces now. Yep. Same thing, plenty of interfaces now. Cool. And same thing. Plenty of interfaces. Okay. Let's boot these up. Let's get our switches fired up. This should just take a second. Doesn't take too long. Whoop. All right. So, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be setting, we're going to take, I guess the best way for us to really do this is so we can understand what we're looking at. Let me so we'll have to create multiple VLAN type topology. All right, so we'll just inside of the switches we'll create multiple VLANs, okay, and then we'll go through how Rstp is then figuring out the convergence of figuring out, all right, now this is the root, this is root, this is not root, these are designated ports, these are root ports inside of the multiple different VLANs that we're going to be setting up. Then we're going to create Ethernet channel groups, okay? We'll create Ethernet channel groups together, and then at the end of it all, what we'll do is we'll add a router to the topology here, okay? And then we'll see how everything then can still communicate with each other, okay? Because there's nothing like seeing everything being able to communicate with each other to then make this all satisfying at the very end, okay? So that's kind of where I'm going with how I think this would be the best way for us to take on what we're going to be talking about, okay? Just make sure I get where I want to be. Yep, okay. All right, that's good. Let me just open up to that chapter, my bookie book that I got here. Again, so this way I can better. It's sometimes easier for me to describe this as we're labbing this up. All right, just makes it easier. So, and then what I should do is pick this up a little bit, pick this up, and then we'll zoom. I'll also zoom into the I'll zoom into the command line too, guys, so you guys can see when we get to that state. So you guys can see the commands a little bit easier. Because I know from this view right now, you know, you guys can probably still see it, but it'd be better if I was to zoom in. So I set up another I have another scene where it's just a little bit more zoomed in for you guys, so you guys can better see as we're walking through the command line and whatnot. So we'll get to that when we get there. These are just booting up right now. Let me have a little bit more water. Let me just check on the chat real quick. That's good. I should just leave that up. Leave that up until now. They should be booting up any minute. Come on, Betsy. Come on, Betsy. All right, got one up. All right, let's see, switch. So if you guys can see. What's that? You guys can pretty much see what I'm doing now. All right. All right. So we're going to move into enable mode, configuration terminal mode now. All right. Let's give this a host name. I'm going to call it switch 1. Okay. So it'll match the name that we had it on its physical, in its physical port there. Well, it's physical, the logical workspace there. All right. All right. So let's start off. Let's look at. Let's do this. Do show spanning tree. All right. So again, we haven't hooked anything up yet. Okay. It's showing again. Here's the priority. All right, the 32.769. Remember how it had that set by default. This is the default. Okay. All right. Now it's just sitting on VLAN 1. All right. We haven't made any VLANs yet or anything like that. Each switch right now is going to state that it's the root switch because nothing's hooked up yet. So each switch is its own current root. Okay. Here's the MAC. All right. So this one, it's 5200 alpha 35 5B. Let's write it down. We'll write it down. Make that a little bit smaller. There. So switch 1 is going to equal to, which we'll just use the last. I'm going to say alpha 335B. All right. I'll use the 000 alpha 335. All right, and it's just showing all of its ports, gigabit 0 to 0 to gigabit 1-3. They're all designated in the forward state. Okay, cool. Let's go over to switch 2 now. Let's open up its. Ooh, we got a follow. Who do we got? Luna Can Music. Luna, yeah, I'm saying that right. Luna Can Music, thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. All right, so let's go into, again, the enable mode and configuration. Terminal mode. All right, let's give this a host name. Switch 2. All right, let's do the show spanning tree command. And again, let's take a look at what we got here. Again, here's our defaults. These are our default values. All right, these are our default values. Now let's write down what we got for a MAC address here. All right, because what we're gonna do is I want to before spanning tree figures it out, I want us to figure out who's gonna be root before spanning tree figures that out for us. Okay, so I'm gonna say that 617 line 5. All right. Again, it's since nothing's hooked up, it's stating that it's its own root. and all of its ports are in the designated forwarding state. Right now. All right. Move to enable mode, configuration terminal mode, and caps lock, host name, and we're going to name you switch 3. Okay. Let's do this. Do spanning tree. And let's take a look, and here we go. Same thing again. Switch 3. And it is stating 0011-8 alpha 91. Okay. So looking at these addresses here, what we're going to be able to figure out is automatic. Well, just for sake, is switch 1. When we hook up the 3 switches, switch 1 is going to become root switch. Okay. Just because now we're not going to mess with the priority number, nothing like that. We're just going to allow spanning tree to do what it's going to do, and it's going to use it's going to obviously look at the MAC after it looks at the priority. Now all the priorities are default, all right? So then it's going to take the MAC address next, and it's going to compare that, and it's going to figure out who's going to be root. Okay, so switch 1, I can tell you right now, switch 1 is going to become root out of all of our switches here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm gonna make our connections. There we go. All right, so let's go back and let's make our connections now. Okay. So we'll say gigabit 0 to gigabit 0. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, let's go with 1 and 1. I'm going to save the zeros for something else later. So 1 and 1, and then say here, we'll say 3 and 3. Okay. Then here to here, we're going to say 3 to 3 to that one. We're going to say 1 1 1 2 1 1. Okay. Now let's go back over to our interfaces again. All right. And remember, now what's going to happen is Rstp is going to start doing its learning and stuff like that. Okay. All right. Well, it already went from learning. All right. It already figured out what's gonna. So what happened here? So did it not become the root? Let's see which one became root. Do spanning tree. This bridge became root. Oh, switch 2 became root. Very interesting. See if anything else changed. Let's go back to switch 1. Run it again just to make sure. Yeah. Well, look at that. Did this have a lower MAC address? I think so. So switch 2 won the election. Yeah. Yep, switch 2 won the election. Zero, 4. That's funny. I would have figured that it would have been switch 1 because of the actual A instead of, unless it thinks of, so that A must be in a hex. Strange. That is fine. That is fine. Okay, that's cool. Well, all right, so this is the MAC address for switches 2. So the 46175. All right, so switch 2 6175. This is the MAC address for switch 1, so it's bridge ID, and that's the alpha 335 Bravo. So the alpha 335 Bravo. Okay. So what happened was is switch 2 won the election. It chose switch 2 for having the lower numeral type number. Okay. All right, winning the root bridge election. Okay, and you can see that by it saying this bridge is root. Okay, so this bridge is root. And then on root, remember, all of its ports are in the forwarding state. Okay, so all of the ports on switch 2, because switch 2 is root now, all of its ports are in the forwarding state, right? And because these are gigabit, all these interfaces are gigabit interfaces, that's why you're seeing all the cost at 4, okay? We'll go over to switch 1 again, all right? So what you're seeing is the gigabit 0-3. The gigabit 0-3 is what we have, what interface we have going to switch 2 over here, okay? And it's put, all the other interfaces though are in the designating forwarding state. So let's go over to switch 3 and let's see what switch 3 is stating. All right, so on switch 3, the gigabit 0-1, all right, the gigabit 0-1, which is the interface that's going from switch 3 to switch 1, that is in the alternate state. Remember, this is Rstp right now that it's using. So it's placed this interface into the alternate state, okay? Which it could become root if, say, this interface were to go down, this interface would come up and be root now, okay? But again, STP and Rstp uses different terminology, all right? So again, the state is blocking. So this is, it's using, it's put it in the alternate, but it's blocking it. So it's still receiving those hello BDUs, because just in case this interface was to go down, it still needs to receive those, but it won't be forwarding or receiving frames out of this interface right here, okay? So this interface is currently, all right, this interface is in the blocking state right now, okay? All right, so that interface right now currently is in the blocking state, all right? Oh, you guys can see. Go over. So yes, so like I was saying, this interface right here is now in the blocking state. So that's why you see this X here now, and that is the actual interface that we're using. So now we got to go over and we're going to assign some VLANs now. All right. So let's create some VLANs. Let's go over to switch 1. All right. Let's make a couple of VLANs. We'll say VLAN 100. All right. We'll just name it sales. All right. Let's make VLAN 200. All right. Let's name that production. All right. And then let's make final VLAN 300. All right. We'll name that admin. All right. Do copy running config, startup config. Write that configuration real quick. All right. Let's go over to you now. Now we haven't assigned those VLANs we just made to any interfaces just yet. Not yet. I want to go ahead and create those VLANs on our other 2 switches real quick. All right. Now remember, I don't have BTP working on these switches, so they're not going to dynamically learn VLANs from one another. Okay, so we have to static. I'd rather it that way anyway. So let's say VLAN 100 name sales VLAN 200 production VLAN 300. Let's name that admin. All right, and let's exit. Write that configuration real quick. Let's come back over to switch 2. Make the same VLANs, VLAN 100. Sales. VLAN 200. Production. All right. And VLAN 300. Let's give that a name. All right. Let's exit. Let's write this configuration now. All right. Go back over to switch 1. Let's do a do show VLAN brief. All right, and as you can see, actively, we don't have any actual physical interfaces on our VLAN. So these are the VLANs we just made. So we made VLAN 100, VLAN 200, and VLAN 300, okay? We added some names, sales, production, and admin. Cool. All right. So now let's start adding some interfaces to our VLANs, okay? So we're going to say that the interface going to switch 3, we'll say that's our sales VLAN, and then the interface going to switch 2, we're going to say that's our production VLAN. Okay, so let's go into our interface gigabit. So the interface that's going from that and that is 0, 1, right? So gigabit 0 0-1, right? Switch port access VLAN 100. All right, and we're probably going to get some messages here pretty soon. And let's just go into interface. And what do we give to go into switch 2? That's switch 2 is gigabit 0-3. All right, so there's that. So we just got that actual we got a CDP message saying that there's a mismatch on our interface. That's because over here, we have a mismatch because remember we signed that this interface to VLAN 100 now. Okay. All right, so let's go into, what did we say that interface was? That was, just take that one more time, 0-3, console. All right, lost my thingy again. It's going to continue to give us those messages. Gigabit 0-3. And we're going to say switch port access VLAN 200. And once we're going to get more of those mismatch VLAN messages now on our other one, because again, we just did the same exact thing. Okay, so let's exit. Let's go over to, There we go. So again, there's more of those messages. Cool. We're going to fix that right now. All right. So we're going to go into interface. Gigabit 0-1. Say switch port access VLAN 100. Let's come over to this one now. We're going to go into interface gigabit 0-3. We're going to say switch port access VLAN. What do we say? 200? Yep. Okay, cool. And those will clear up all those messages now. Fix that. Sometimes that gets messed up on. Just writing that configuration real quick. All right. Now that we've assigned different VLANs, now let's check out our spanning tree protocol. Let's check out let's check out if we see some differences now. So let's do this. Do show spanning tree. See what we got. Ooh, what do we got? Now look at switch one. Did you become root? I don't know. I think it might have. Which one did you become? Root all of a sudden? Let's take a look. Come over here to this one now. You're still saying root? Ooh, we got some competition going on in this. This one? What do we got? Switch one. Let's run that again. All right. So switch one has become. So switch one is the root bridge for VLAN 100. So the VLAN 100, that's only connected to currently the switch 3. All right. But it is the designated bridge for VLAN 200, which is going to switch 2. Okay. So it states that it is the root bridge for VLAN 100, designated bridge for VLAN 200. Remember, this is the multiple spanning tree protocol per multiple VLANs. And what we'll do, it is stating that it is the root for VLAN 1 though. Let's take a look at switch 2 though. Again, I want to understand what it is stating. So this is stating that is VLAN. It is the root for VLAN 100. But again, nothing is connecting it back though now to that. It's stating that it's the root bridge for VLAN 200. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so you can see how that changed things. You can see how that changed the topology of how STP is working inside of the actual network. Well, inside of these switches at least. Okay. So now, since we created those and we've looked at some of the summary. Now let's just take a look at some of these summary reports. So let's do a do show spanning tree summary. Let's take a look at that. And here's another neat way to look at it. So switch is in PVST, so it's not using rapid spanning tree. It's in PVST mode, which is in per VLAN spanning tree mode. Okay. The root bridge, it's root bridge for VLAN 1 and VLAN 100. The extended system ID is enabled. Port fast is disabled. Port fast, BDU guard, BDU filter, those are disabled. Loopback guard is disabled. Yeah, bridge assurance. All right. And it's showing that there's 6 links in the forwarding state. All right. In VLAN 1, and it's in for VLAN 100 and VLAN 200. There's the 2 states are in the forward. Okay. And a total of 3 VLANs. Okay. This one now. Hit you with a summary. We'll take a look at you. All right. Switches in PVSD mode. This is the root bridge for none, so it's not the root bridge of any. All right. And the only 2, even though this has 3 VLANs in it, okay, it is only showing that the two actual VLANs that are in use for STP right now, which is VLAN 1 and VLAN 100. Okay, 2 VLANs. All right. It's got 7 forwarding ports in VLAN 1 and 1 in VLAN 100. Now let's go with you. And we'll do the do show spanning tree summary as well. All right. So it's stating that it is the root bridge for VLAN 1 and VLAN 1 and 200. Okay. And let's keep going down. It's showing that the 2 VLANs, it's got 7. So it is, so the reason why this is root, okay. Okay. I get it. I get it. I get it. Because of this link right here that we have going from switch 2 to switch 3. Now let's do this then. Let's put this link right here on these 2 in VLAN 3. Let's see what happens. VLAN 300. So what interfaces did I assign those? Let's take a look. So that is on the gigabit 111 console interface. Gigabit 1-1. And let's say switch port access VLAN 300. Interface gigabit 1-1. Switch port access VLAN 300. Exit. Let's do. All right. Back to you now. All right. Now let's take a look at what changed. This should change some more stuff to our topology now. All right. So let's do show spanning tree. All right, so we have VLAN 100. It's still saying the root bridge. All right, there's VLAN 200. It's stating that it's the root bridge for VLAN 200 still. And now it's stating for VLAN 300, it is the root bridge for VLAN 300. Oh, cool. So switch 2 is doing a lot of cool stuff. It's the main guy right now. So let's do a do show spanning tree. So we got VLAN 1. Ooh, what happened here? Switch 3 took the root for VLAN 1. Let's find out what happened. What changed? All right, so we have our VLAN 100. Remember, VLAN 100 is on this interface right here, going back to switch 1. Okay. So what do we got? Root ports. Yep. So it's stating that this is a root port for VLAN VLAN 200 for VLAN 100 going to switch 1, and it's saying that this is the root port for VLAN 300 going to switch 2. Okay. But though it is stating it is now the root for VLAN 1. Okay. So let's take a look at all of our switches now. So let's do another do show run. Do show spanning tree. So again, now that none of our switches interfaces are connected to VLAN 1, so they're all off on their own VLANs now. They're all going to be the root bridge for their own VLAN 1, because VLAN 1 is not connected to any of one of them now. Cool. That's why we're getting this is root. So each one is now a root in their own VLAN 1. Right? But switch 1 is root for 100 though. All right? But it's not root for VLAN 200. That's still switch 2. All right? All right. So we have a root, a designated, so it's in type role, status forwarding. Let's do this one more time. Summary now. All right, so switch 2, it is the root bridge for VLAN 1, VLAN 200, and VLAN 300. Cool. So it states that it has 6 in VLAN 1 and then 1 and 1 in both the other VLANs. So VLAN switch 2 has become the pretty much the dominant switch here. Well, it won the election for pretty much everything. And if we had another connection going back to all these other switches in VLAN 1, then it would then be that it would be the root bridge for still every single VLAN, and all these other switches would still, it would then have that root to all the other ones too. And that's why even do the summary, every single one of them now is going to state that they're the root bridge for VLAN 1 in their own respective way they are. All right? In their own respective way they are. Even though each one has two connected, they're connected to two actual different VLANs. Do the summary. Again, there you go. So again, they're all respective to their own VLAN 1. All right, so they're the root for each and every one of their own VLANs. All right, but spanning tree has selected a root for each for the separate VLANs. Okay, so because we don't have an actual connection for VLAN 100 going to switch 2, that's why switch 1 is taking over as the root for 100, because 100 is going over to switch 3 over here. Okay. All right, so now what we can do, let's I guess now let's get into Ethernet channels now. All right, let's get into Ethernet channels. Okay, so what do we have over here? So let's do this show spanning tree. Spec file. All right. So out of our gigabit 0-1, so 0-1, so we'll do 0-2 and 0-1 over to gigabit 0-3 over here as our channel group. So let's do this. I'm gonna move interface gigabit 0-2 to Vlan, what is that? Vlan 100. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, do the same thing on this switch too. Interface gigabit 0-2. Switch port, access, and 100. Okay. That's it. Now I'm going to create a link over to there, but I want to, I'm going to create a channel group though. And then you'll see how once we add a channel group, an internet channel group, how that is then going to, you'll see a port group number instead of a actual interface number, okay? So let's move into, okay. Let's do interface gigabit 0, it's 0-1 through 2. All right. And we're going to say channel group, let's say 1, say, I'm going to say mode on for now. Okay. Let's go over to switch 3 now. Let's move into interface range, gigabit 0-1 to 2. I'm going to say channel group. I'm going to say channel group 1. Mode. Okay. Now let's make our link. Set 2 and 2. So, as you could tell, so our interface channel state is up. Remember, because we have matching settings. Okay, so we have them both in the same VLAN. They're both access ports. We didn't mess around with duplex. We didn't mess around with speed. Nothing like that. Okay. Let's exit. Write this configuration real quick. And I'm just going to do here too as well. Same thing. We got our confirmation that our port group came up successfully. Let's exit. Let's write that configuration. Okay. Now let's take a look at our span tree. Let's see what it says now. All right. So here we go. On our VLAN 100 now, okay, we have a port group of port group 1. So that is this port group that we created over from switch 1 to switch 3. Okay, so now our VLAN 100 is supporting a port group. Okay, it is logically supporting that port group. So port channel, there we go. So port channel 1. All right, it is logically taking those two physical interfaces and we've combined them into one logical port now. Okay, all right. So here we go. So we have port, all right, port channel 1, instead of it stating an actual interface, a gigabit interface, okay? All right, so let's do a sum now. Let's come over here. And let's do a sum. Okay, do show spanning tree summary. Let's take a look. Let's do a do show spanning tree status. Active bridge detail. Let's look at detail. See what that shows us. So, oh, so there it is. So out of port 1, so VLAN 100 is executing spanning tree protocol. Bridge identification number is 32768. Syst ID is 100. Out of that address, configure the hello timer. We are root in the spanning tree. Cool. Number of topology changes. Yep. And hold times port channel. So port channel 1 of VLAN is designated forward. Path cost is 3, so we've actually lowered our path cost. Okay. Cool. All right. So we looked at that. So we made an actual physical port. Now let's do a do show. Let's do a do show VLAN. Ooh, look at that. We even got a change in our VLAN brief. So on VLAN 100, we're now showing, instead of an actual interfaces now, we're showing a port channel on our actual VLAN brief now. So on VLAN 100, instead of it showing those actual individual interfaces, it's showing a port channel. Okay? So let's do this now. Let's make another port channel to switch 1 to switch 3 on VLAN 200. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let me just take a look at which one. So that's gigabit 0-3. So it'll be 1-0 now. All right, very good. So interface gigabit 1-0. Let's say switch port access VLAN 200. Okay. And we just come over to this one, do the same thing. Interface gigabit 0. Switch port access VLAN 200. Exit. Let's do an interface range. We can't do a range. We'll have to do them each one separately. Okay. Gigabit, what's that? 0-3, right? All right, so that would be, so we're gonna say channel group. We're gonna say 2, mode on. All right, interface gigabit 0-1. All right, we're gonna say channel group. Channel group 2, mode on. Okay now. And we have to do this individual, so I'm in that. So I'm just gonna make that channel group 2, mode on. Okay, interface gigabit 0-3, channel group 2, mode on. Okay. come over here, make our connection. Go 1 to 1. And create that link now. Let's exit. And let's just write this configuration real quick. Yeah. Exit. Now let's take a look. Do show spanning tree. What we got? So here we go. So out of our VLAN 200, our port channel 2 again successfully came up because we kept all of our settings the same. Okay. All right. Now so we still have a single interface, a single physical interface going to switch 3, which is on that, which is on VLAN 300. Okay. So we'll do a show VLAN brief. And again, here we go. So on our production VLAN, we have port group 0 active and running. All right, let's do the same thing. Do show VLAN brief. Now we're showing we have 2 port groups. We have one in sales. All right, port group 1, and you have 1 in production. Okay, cool. Do show tree. All right, look at that. Now in VLAN 100, we have our port group 1. Cool. And we'll go down to 2. And in VLAN 200, now we have our port group 200. And port group 200. So it is stating again. So switch 2 is still root, but the port group itself is the root interface, obviously, because it's the only one going to it at this point. And again, each and every one of these is respectively in VLAN 1, their own actual root. But VLAN switch 1 is still root for VLAN 100. Oh, cool. So we made Ethernet channels, and we did that. Now let's make some. Close this down, actually. Let's add here. Let's go to this view, and you guys can kind of see where we made those multiple links on each one. So on here, this is port group 1, all right, and then this is port group 2. Okay. So now let's add a let's do this. Let's add a router. That kind of finish this off a little bit. And what I will do is, yeah, let's add a router. Let's have some fun with this real quick before we finish things off. So I'm gonna do this. So I'm not using that. I'm not using the gigabit 0 dash interface, which is good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to interface gigabit 0 dash 0. Switch port, trunk, encapsulation, .1Q, all right. Switch port, mode, trunk. So I'm gonna make a trunk out of this. Okay. I'm gonna make VLAN 1 a trunk. Okay, guys. Add some switches. These are just unmanaged switches, all right? But what they're going to represent is this. I'll show you in a second. So what do we got? VLAN 1 going to that one. So we're going to say VLAN 1. VLAN 100, I mean. 200. PCs. PC 300-1. Call you, oh wait, 200-1. Yeah, I gotta change the names of that one too. 200-1. PC 200-2. VLAN 200, not 300. Good. All right. PC 100-1 and PC 100-2. Okay. Then I need an actual interface, and I'm going to use the I'll use the zeros. That's fine. Perfect. And then I need to add those. So interface gigabit 0.0 switch port access VLAN 200. Interface gigabit 0.0 switch port VLAN 100. Right. Good. U to 0 to 0 to 0 to 0. Cool. Let's dive into U real quick. Let's just go through in a second. These links. Now let's see. Let's get some network traffic going on here. Some good traffic. Yeah, see what we're doing. All right. Got to do one more message before I actually start running, right? Come on. Give me that last message. Okay. I'm not gonna wait for you. There it goes. Ah, okay. All right. So we're going to move into the interface, gigabit, 0-0 interface. Okay, we're going to give it the IP address, 10.0.0.1.25.25.25.0. All right. Okay, let me go to my other scene for you guys, but you guys can see what I'm doing. All right. And we're going to give it a new shot. All right. Now let's go into interface, gigabit, 0-0.1. And we're going to give the encapsulation .1Q. We're going to say VLAN 1. We're going to say native. Okay. And then we're going to give it the IP address, 10.0.1.1.5.5.0. Shut command. If I can stop spelling so fast, there we go. And interface gigabit 0-0.100. Say encapsulation .1Q 100 now. IP address 10.0.100 1 25.25.25.0. Shut. All right, interface gigabit 0-0.200 encapsulation .1Q 200. All right, the address 10.0.200-1/25.25.25.0. No shot. Very good. Now let's exit out of there. Let's give this a do right real quick. So that's IP DHCP, cool. And we're gonna give it the old name of VLAN 100. Say network 10.0.100.0.25.25.25.0. Say default router is 10.0.100-1. S is 10.0.100-1. Exit. Say IP DHCP. Cool. Let's say VLAN 200. 200-0 25.25.25.0. I'm going to give the default router 10.0.200-1. And S 10.0.200-1. Let's exit. Right. And let's do some excluding. Okay, DHCP exclude. We're going to say 10.0.100-1 to 10.0.100 to 100. Sure. Right. IP DHCP exclude. Let's say 10.0.200 to 0 to 10.0.200 to 100. Cool. All right. That's right. Configuration now, and let's just check it out. Let's do a do show run real fast. All right, so we got some DHCP excluding addresses. We got some DHCP. It's all set up. Looks like it's set up pretty good. So we got our VLAN 200, our VLAN 100. Addressing looks good. Let's check out our interfaces. So we got our gigabit interface 0-0 is good. That's set up good. Okay, we have our first encapsulated one. Yep. All right, that looks good. All right, so other one looks good. And that looks good. Those are our sub interfaces. All right, everything looks good. Now, hopefully, everything will work as planned. So let's fire up these other switches. Let me move back to the other so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm just firing up these other switches real fast. And then we'll fire up our PCs, and all goes well, our PCs should be dynamically addressed, should get some addresses. And then also, they should be able to communicate with each other too. All right, within their own respect. So they should be able to communicate with the other VLANs, and also they also should be getting addressed in the correct VLANs as well too, and all that happy jazz too. This would be a nice topology for you guys to really practice on. Cisco. Ooh, we got an address. So let's check it out. Let's go to this one now. Address. Woo! I love it when a plan comes together, baby. I tell you. Clockwork, guys. I swear it's like clockwork. All right. Switch my view to you guys so you guys can see. All right. So, we're in. This is PC 100-2, which is just stating that it's in the 100 VLAN, and it's the second PC, and it's got the IP address of 10.0.100-102. So our DHCP server worked. It dynamically allocated an address to it in our range that we set our DHCP server to do it. Now let's make sure that we have some communication. Now let's talk to. So let's go over to PC 200-1, which the IP address over there is 10.0.200 now, 101. Now let's ping 10.0.100.102, which was that other PC, okay? Woo! I love it when a plan comes together, baby. All right, guys. Yeah, this is, again, this is a awesome lab. This has been a great lab. So we set up, we got spanning tree. We set up some port groups. So we set up port groups, Ethernet channels. We got that all to work. And then, again, I've demonstrated that we have only made one trunking. We only said one trunking actual port, and that's on switch 1. So on switch 1, I said I just want one trunk, and I assigned it just one interface. That's this interface going to this router, okay? And that trunking interface, then it's sending those inter-VLAN messages, all right, throughout all these switches over these port groups, all right, because we successfully set this all up correctly, all right, and we got addresses dynamically allocated to us. We have inter-VLAN communication, and this, and it's working perfect. I love it. I'm loving it. So yeah, guys. This would be the perfect opportunity. I don't see any messages coming through on the chat. But guys, this has been a very, very good lab. And let's talk about what tomorrow will bring us, because we just finished part 3 of the CCNA cert guide. So we just completed another part. Woo! This is big, guys. We're blasting right through this. We're gonna be CCNA certified before we know it. I can't wait. So what's going to happen tomorrow? So tomorrow we're going to be doing a big review, okay? We're going to be reviewing from part 1 to part 2 to part 3. Again, making sure that this knowledge is just like cemented into my Joe's thick skull, all right? So we're going to do a big review tomorrow.
All right. And again, tomorrow will be the great. So tomorrow we're going to do a big review. We're going to be in the Pearson's test program. We're going to continue to do that test over and over and over again to really make sure we have this knowledge in our heads really, really well. Okay. Now we're going to dive into doing some more labbing. We're going to touch up on some labs. But what I want to say though is tomorrow, after we're done doing our review, if there's anybody out there that's interested in downloading Cisco Packet Tracer, please download Cisco Packet Tracer. If you have any questions about how to get Cisco Packet Tracer installed and all that happy jazz, that would be the day to do it, because Friday, what I want to do Friday is, again, I want to hardcore nail some labs. Lab, until my fingers are bleeding from me punching my keyboard 1,001 times. I want to lab it up on Friday. So Friday will be the day that we continue to just lab and continue to go over these things. So when we come back fresh from our weekend celebrations, we'll pick up right on part 4 of the CCNA cert guide, okay? In part 4, we're going to be diving into, finally, we're going to be taking the next step on our TCP/IP ladder, and we're going to be finally entering into the realm of IPv4 addressing, okay? So we're going to be getting into the network stage of our next adventure, all right? That's chapter 11, perspective of IP4 subnetting. Subnetting is going to make my head hurt, okay? Chapter 12, analyzing classful IPv4 networks. Chapter 13, analyzing subnet masks, okay? And chapter 14, analyzing exiting subnets, okay? So we got some big headache making chapters for us to get through. And that's why, again, I want to pick it up fresh on Monday, because I don't want us to get partly through IPv4 addressing, and then take the break over the weekend, and then, you know, having to recap everything back on Monday, because it's going to take us all week just to get through all of this stuff on part 4, okay? So it's going to be a great way to start. We're going to start fresh on Monday with all this stuff. But guys, join me again tomorrow, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, all right? We're going to be doing the big review, part 1, part 2, and part 3 of the CCNA cert, live here again. And then, as always, we're going to be doing some labs, again, as always. And from my house to you guys, I love every single one of you guys. And then thank you, all of you guys, for sticking around as long as you have today. And for all of us that are on the East Coast, make sure you guys get home safe tonight. We're going to be getting that big snowstorm tonight, so get home safe. And yeah, thank you guys. Mwah! Love you guys.